Complete the Centurions, 1986. Animated series explored. The 80s and its love affair with futuristic cartoon is well known, and the Centurions takes the legacy forward with another intriguing idea, where in the near future, a trio known as the Centurions fights to uphold justice in a world filled with advanced technology and action-packed challenges. Created through a collaboration between Sunrise in Japan and Ruby Spears Productions, this animated series stood out for its mix of science fiction, high-stakes adventure, and futuristic gadgets. With 65 thrilling episodes, it quickly built a dedicated fan base, bolstered by its unique toy line that became a hallmark of the show's appeal. Now, let's step into this futuristic world and rediscover the excitement of this sci-fi classic. Season 1, Episode 1, The Sky is on Fire. At the Oceana Research Station, 3 workers operate a forklift unloading crates. Suddenly, a half-human, machine-like man bursts from one crate and attacks them. Meanwhile, the Centurions, Max Ray, Jake Rockwell, and Ace McCloud, arrive on the island by jet. They're greeted by Lieutenant Susan Smith, who shrugs off Ace's cocky flirting, pointing out his infamous reputation. She drives them to meet the Admiral, just in time for an important demonstration of the new cryogenic ray, a freezer gun that can douse fires in seconds by turning them into dry ice. An amazing invention, ain't it? Anyhow, the Centurions are supposed to transport it, but suddenly, the machine man who turns out to be Dr. Terra's henchman comes barging in, intending to steal the invention. Susan, surprisingly, betrays the Centurions, revealing herself as Dr. Terra's daughter. She helps her father's forces steal the cryogenic ray and escape. The Centurions call on their ally, Crystal, who transmits their high-tech suits to them. Max, using his underwater suit, chases the fleeing villains, while Ace and Jake handle decoys on land and in the air. Soon, Max realizes that Dr. Terra's daughter and the Machine Man split up and used 4 machine decoys to make it difficult for him to catch them. But since his suit is best suited for underwater endeavors, he launches underwater missiles to attack the decoys. The characters had the iconic catchphrase, "Power Extreme," which they shouted before suiting up in their exosuits. The transformation scenes were a significant part of the show's appeal and followed the tradition of animated series like Transformers and He-Man. However, despite their efforts, Dr. Terra's forces escape. Very naturally, the boys are not okay with this. Meanwhile, back at Dr. Terra's base, he explains his plan. He intends to use the cryogenic ray to defuse the fire that he was about to set on the radioactive ring surrounding the Earth, which would raise the planet's temperature to catastrophic levels. Surprisingly, or rather, it's very in character for Miss Crystal Kane to discover the impending danger too. She alerts the Centurions who are leaving the Oceana Research Station via an aircraft when, due to the disturbance created by Dr. Terra, a ray hits their aircraft, sending it crashing into the water. However, Max rescues his teammates and gets them to safety at the Centurion headquarters. In New York, Dr. Terra broadcasts an ultimatum: surrender within 12 hours or face extinction. He gives them the ultimatum to bring to him a written document of submission as quickly as possible. The Centurions seek the World Council's president, who decides to surrender and leaves with a suitcase to deliver the documents to Dr. Terra. While the president waits at the terrace, seemingly alone, Dr. Terra's airship arrives. The president boards the ship and presents the document. However, an alert suggests that a Centurion is following them. He attacks the president, but he is revealed to be a Centurion Max in disguise. Dr. Terra realizes that the suitcase must have a tracking device, and it infuriates him. When discovered, Dr. Terra ejects Max in mid-air, but Crystal transmits Max's suit just in time for him to land safely. Once there, they all realize that Dr. Terra would be somewhere from where he can easily use the cryogenic ray to bring down the Earth's temperature once everyone surrenders to him. Tracking Dr. Terra to a base in Mount Tibet, the Centurions arrive there, only to be ambushed and imprisoned. They manage to break free and briefly reconnect with Crystal, who transmits their suits. After a fierce battle, the villains escape, leaving the cryogenic ray behind, but setting the mountain to self-destruct. The Centurions escape with the ray, and Ace uses it to restore the Earth's balance. The episode ends with Jake offering his friends an unappetizing chili recipe, which even their dog, Shadow, refuses to eat. Well, I couldn't eat it either.
Had enough?
Episode 2, Battle Beneath the Sea. Another chaotic day with Doc Terror arrives as he launches an aggressive attack on a critical power grid in Australia, seeking vengeance on the World Council for rejecting his demands. Crystal receives the distress signal and immediately alerts the Centurions. She informs Ace that Doc Terror is attacking the South Pacific power grid, warning them that if they don't intervene quickly, the situation could spiral out of control. Confident, Ace assures her that they've got it handled. He, Max and Jake suit up in their advanced exoframes and are teleported to the scene of the attack. Once there, the Centurions quickly take command. Jake tackles the enemy forces on land, Ace soars through the air, and Max dives deep into the water. Together, they destroy most of Doc Terror's cyberborgs, forcing the villain to order a retreat. One of the most important lessons of this series is how teamwork can take you further in life rather than being fragmented. Anyhow, the epic teamwork by the Centurions comes as a detriment to Terror. However, he is frustrated but not defeated, mind you. Realizing that the Centurions' assault weapons are overwhelming, Doc Terror hatches a plan to cut off their ammunition supply. Hacker is confused, but Doc Terror assures him he has a plan to show him soon enough. Meanwhile, Jake visits the Centurions' secret weapons production facility, a high-tech C-lab. The detailed animation here was one of the reasons the Centurions stood out visually. The lab's manager, a capable woman, gives Jake a tour, explaining how the C-lab doubles as both a production center and their home. When Jake expresses concern about potential attacks, the manager reassures him that they're protected by a powerful force field. She also introduces him to a friendly, highly intelligent dolphin that helps them interpret signals. However, Jake's concerns prove valid as Doc Terror puts his plan into motion. Doc Terror orders Hacker to stage a diversionary attack in West Africa to lure the Centurions away, while his new creation, Miko, is assigned to launch a sneak attack on the C-Lab. As the Centurions rush to confront Hacker, Miko activates a volcano, causing massive tidal waves that damage the C-Lab and disable its protective force field. Though the civilians remain unharmed, Miko takes the opportunity to storm the lab and hold several of them hostage. Jake and the lab manager, hidden away, watch as Miko greets Hacker. While Max and Ace are taking a break, Crystal informs them of the second attack on the C-Lab. Alarmed by Jake's silence, they prepare to investigate. Meanwhile, Doc Terror gloats to the Centurions about his conquest of the C-Lab, bragging that he's cut off their supply of weapons, leaving them at a disadvantage. Determined to take back the lab, Max and Ace dive into the ocean, but they're immediately attacked by a swarm of sharks. Overwhelmed and running low on ammo, their situation looks bleak until the dolphins arrive to help them, of course. With their help, the Centurions break through the enemy defenses and infiltrate the lab. Though Miko and Hacker manage to escape after a brief skirmish, Doc Terror unveils one last ace, a giant robotic squid. It attacks the C-Lab, but Jake, thinking fast, manages to electrocute the beast and defeat it. The episode ends with the C-Lab restored, the hostages freed, and the Centurions once again victorious. Episode 3, An Alien Affair. A comet is streaking across space. Crystal, who's lazily manning the Skyvault's beaming pod, remarks that the comet has travelled an incredible distance to reach their galaxy. Lucy, being a gorilla, seemed less than thrilled about it though. Meanwhile, the Centurions, Max, Jake and Ace, are aboard a prototype shuttle investigating the comet. At first, it looked like any ordinary comet, but things quickly fell off. They contact Crystal, who reveals that the comet is hollow, suggesting it's more than just space debris. Ace, the team's aerial expert, volunteers to go in. As Crystal beams him down, Max and Jake try to learn more. However, it soon backfires, and they ask Crystal if she could beam them back up into Skyvault. But since the shuttle was going under the sun's shadow, she couldn't bring them back up. However, she could beam them into the comet. Max, judging the situation, was willing to go inside the comet. Inside, Ace finds the environment unsettlingly artificial, with breathable air but no signs of life. When Max and Jake join him, they split up to explore. It's Jake who stumbles onto something big. The comet's core contains advanced controls, clearly not of human origin. Realizing they're in over their heads, they prepare to leave. But just then, Ace discovers a tunnel and is attacked by an enormous cat-like alien. His weapon is useless. The creature absorbs energy and hurls it back. Jake and Max join the fray, but their attacks only feed the beast. Desperate, Max orders Crystal to beam them up. The Centurions are thus back on the Sky Vault, and someone called Dr. Kent rushes over to them to know what they learned and saw within the comet. Just as the Centurions are walking back, suddenly the creature appears on the ship. It also sucked the beaming energy and now is here. It goes on a rampage wreaking havoc, but Max tries to fend it off using a fire extinguisher. They figured that if it thrives on energy, it must hate the cold. Jake then asks Crystal to help him change into his detonator high-tech suit so that he can use the freeze guns at the creature. She did just that. They managed to back the creature into a cold chamber and drop its temperatures below freezing degrees. Max, though, told Jake to stand guard, who agreed, but also advised Max to come up with a way to get rid of the thing. The group, Max, Ace, Crystal, and Dr. Kent, regrouped and started to discuss what to do. However, the creature begins to siphon energy again. Crystal cuts off the power, but it's too late. The alien escapes, aiming for the generator. One important thing to note is that the show featured notable female characters, such as Crystal Kane, who was the team's primary liaison. She was depicted as intelligent and resourceful on many occasions throughout the show, just like her quick thinking when she shut the power off. Consequently, the creature started to control all the computer systems within the Sky Vault. As such, it was effectively controlling it. They realized that the shuttle was headed straight for Earth. Dr. Kent observed that if it reaches the Earth, it would have plenty of sources to still power energy from, and he'd be unstoppable. However, Crystal realized she could control the beaming pod even now, and thus told Ace to stop the Sky Vault from outside. Meanwhile, Jake and Max go to the control room with the plan to overload the creature, as they observed that it can suck power energy in limited shifts. Using Jake's assault weapons, Max pulled the creature into outer space, and Crystal successfully beamed Max back to safety. However, the creature was still out in open space, which bothered them, and Max said that he had hooked it to solar mirror so that he'd overload and explode. The episode closes on a light-hearted note as Dr. Kent jokes that the comet will return in about 300 years, a good long time.
Jake, follow my lead.
Episode 4. Found One Lost World. The fourth episode starts off with Ace and Max once again facing off against Doc Terror's latest scheme. Teaming up, they take down his robotic lackeys, the Borgs, and turn their attention to his aerial ship. With a few well-placed shots, they bring it crashing down, forcing Doc Terror into a hasty retreat. Once the battle is over, they call on Crystal to beam them back. However, Doc Terror and Hacker have crash-landed in a mysterious cave. As they venture deeper, they stumble upon a hidden world that looks eerily like prehistoric Earth, complete with living dinosaurs. Spotting the massive creatures, Doc Terror devises a new plan, turning these dinosaurs into cyborgs, or dino-borgs. But before he can act, the dinosaurs attack. Just as things take a turn for the worse, a group of green-skinned beings steps in, using psychic headgear to control the dinosaurs and save Doc Terror and Hacker. Seeing the potential of these creatures, Terror decides to use them as his new pawns. Meanwhile, Max and Jake are visiting a natural museum and are currently viewing dinosaur skeletons. They're discussing how the dinosaurs, if they weren't extinct, would have evolved into smart living creatures like or better than humans. Back at the hidden world though, Doc Terror has brought in his portable cyborg making machines that he used to create his new Dino-Borgs. He sent his first experimental Dino-Borg to the upper surface of the Earth where it was wreaking havoc. At the Sky Vault, the computer picked up the signals of unnatural living energy from Africa, and thus, Jake and Ace go to check it out. Once there, they encounter the Dino-Borg and try to fight it off. They were overwhelmed for a while, however, the duo managed to back it into a volcanic pit. Then, they go on to search the place and happen upon the crater that leads to the underground Iron Age world, where reptile-like people evolved. The native inhabitants, however, mistaking Max and Ace for allies of Doc Terror, capture them. But the two manage to escape and split up to find Terror. Jake confronts him first, but is quickly captured. Unable to contact Jake, Ace asks Crystal to send Max over to help. Realizing Jake has likely been taken hostage, they seek out the reptilian natives, who eventually lead them to Doc Terror's hideout. And meanwhile, Terror is planning to use the Dinoborgs to wreak havoc on Earth and destroy all life forms. But first, he plans to make them eliminate Jake. However, before that happens, Max and Ace arrive and ask Crystal to send Jake his high-tech suit. They then together fight and defeat Doc Terror and prevent the Dinoborgs from going through the crater to the upper surface. The episode ends with the native people controlling the Dinoborgs, who they are using to build and progress their civilization. Episode 5, Sand Doom. Things pick up in a sprawling desert where a caravan is moving cautiously. Skyvolt, a high-tech satellite, receives a distress call from the caravan warning of a sudden storm. Crystal is puzzled as her computer shows no signals. Despite this, the caravan insists they change their route to escape the storm. But when Crystal does, the storm appears again, seeming to chase them. As the storm draws closer, a massive worm-like creature emerges, terrifying the caravan. Meanwhile, in a lively amusement park, Max and Jake are waiting for their friend Ace, who's off on a date in outer space. Suddenly, Crystal contacts them, informing them of the trouble and urging them to meet her at specific desert coordinates. They grab Ace, teleport to the desert, and meet Crystal, who is already there driving a car. They hop in and set off to find the missing caravan. However, they come up with no explanation for the caravan's sudden disappearance. They then drive into a city in the desert where a prince beams them to his palace, welcoming them and asking about the caravan. During their stay, Crystal promises the prince that Jake and Ace will demonstrate their aerial defense skills. As they do, a voice mocks their display, dismissing it as child's play. The prince introduces General Amir, a stern military leader. Max grows suspicious when the demonstration equipment begins firing real shots, but Amir shrugs it off as a programming glitch. Later, while Crystal distracts Amir by requesting a tour of the geothermal power station, Max sneaks into Amir's office and discovers a map of the station. Unbeknownst to him, Doc Terror and his accomplice Hacker are watching through hidden cameras. As Max tries to leave, Hacker ambushes him and throws him into a well. With help from Lucy, Max manages to escape. Meanwhile, Crystal notices something wrong during her tour. The power output is at maximum, but it's unclear where all that energy is going. Amir suddenly attacks her, but using her quick thinking, she narrowly escapes and calls for backup. Jake and Ace arrive just in time, defeating her pursuers. But no sooner did they think that they were out of danger than the giant worm attacked Crystal and they mysteriously vanished. Max, Jake and Ace devise a plan to infiltrate the power station, using the map Max found. However, Doc Terror and his cronies are watching. They've taken Crystal hostage and plan to destroy the station. The Centurions split up, Max to rescue Crystal and Jake and Ace to stop the destruction. Max quickly locates Crystal and frees her, but they are suddenly confronted by the General. However, they easily overwhelm him. Even then, the corrupt General tries to use his giant worm pet to overwhelm the Centurions. However, Max's quick thinking saves the day. In fact, it is wise to note that Max Ray was considered a unique action hero at the time. Unlike many other tough guy characters of the 1980s, Max had a calm, analytical demeanor and often served as the strategist of the group. His character was groundbreaking in that it represented intelligence and planning over sheer brute strength, which was a rarity for animated heroes of that time. Episode 6, Whale Song. It all begins with a high-profile ribbon-cutting ceremony celebrating the opening of the England-France Trans-Channel Bridge. The mood quickly shifts from festive to chaotic when a group of whales suddenly attacks the foundation of the bridge, causing widespread panic. Crystal, receiving a distress signal, immediately contacts Max to inform him of the unusual event. Skeptical, Max, who had worked with whales in the past, struggles to believe that whales could be responsible for such destruction. Crystal, however, insists that something is terribly wrong and urges Max and the Centurions to investigate. Max agrees, but is adamant that they must not harm the whales, only subdue them. Behind the chaos is none other than Doc Terror, who has devised a new scheme involving a mysterious musician capable of playing a whale song that commands the creatures to wreak havoc on humankind. Just as the whales continue their rampage, the Centurions arrive and manage to subdue them without causing harm. Seeking answers, the team heads to a whale research centre in Ireland, where Crystal consults Dr. O'Hare, a whale expert, who confirms the situation is highly unusual. Max mentions a whale he once worked with named Whistler, and using a tuning fork, he summons Whistler, who shares that another whale, a white one, is emitting a strange song. Max and Whistler set off to investigate, while Crystal stays behind to decode the whale song for more clues. However, the strangest thing happened on the way there, or perhaps not so strange. Doc Terror using the whale song affected Whistler, and now he is also on a rampage. He attacks Max and attempts to eat him. However, when Max comes to consciousness, he finds himself with Doc Terror and Hacker. Terror tells him that they are at the belly of his new creation, an android whale, and the lady musician is using the whale song to control whales who are acting as sentinels for Terror's evil plan. Terror reveals his plan to use the whales to destroy major trade ports, triggering global chaos and leaving him poised to seize power. His next target? Venice. This is one example among several episodes of the Centurions that had underlying environmental messages. Dr. Terror's plans often involved destroying or manipulating natural resources for his own gain, while the Centurions worked to preserve Earth's ecosystems. Meanwhile, Crystal grows concerned when Max goes silent and calls in Jake and Ace for backup. As they race to find him, Max uses his cunning to escape the android whale, but Terror sends Whistler after him again. After a scuffle, Max and Whistler dive into the waters, giving an impression to Doc Terror that Whistler had drowned Max. The other two Centurions arrive, but even they are seemingly overpowered by the whales, and Terror rejoices on the fact that he has taken down all the three Centurions and heads towards Venice. However, the truth is that Max successfully broke Whistler from the thrall of the whale song, and the other two also escaped safely. Meanwhile, Crystal decodes the whale song as a destructive command and tries to warn the Centurions, but she is late. The whales are already attacking the Canal City. However, the Centurions are never late. They arrive, and even though the situation is worse for the moment, they manage to avert the crisis.
It's a tornado coming straight at us.
Episode 7. Tornado of Terror. The 7th episode starts off with a ship transporting new equipment, Weathermaster, that is set to change the ways of the globe's weather system. Our boys, the Centurions, are tasked to carry it safely. At first, the journey was smooth, but suddenly the ship's radar detected a rock structure out of nowhere, making it impertinent that they changed their course. If you're thinking that this averted the danger, then you'll be sorely mistaken. As the ship diverts, there is a tornado brimming which almost capsizes the boat. As the Centurions try to get hold of the situation, they're attacked by none other than Doc Terror and his cyborgs. Terror's goal is to steal the Weathermaster, and unfortunately for the Centurions, he succeeds. However, the tornado kept the Centurions busy, so they were unable to chase Doc Terror. As soon as they touch land, the Centurions are greeted by Dr. Isabel, who was once Max's friend, or more than a friend. Isabel tells them that she knows what happened and might be able to give them more information. Max tells the other two Centurions to go ahead and report today's ongoing events, while he follows Isabel. Isabel tells Max that the tornado is the handiwork of Dr. Stephen Storms, a once brilliant scientist who created a helmet that was able to create tornadoes but lost due to some mishap during the very experiment. He lost his mental sanity. Now, he has thrown in his lot with Doc Terror and wishes to control the Weathermaster to create even more dangerous storms. She also tells him that Storm owns various warehouses and hints to Max that he could find the estranged doctor there. As Max promises to solve it and leaves, Isabel is kidnapped by Hacker and taken to one of Dr. Storm's warehouses. However, Max sees it and goes in after her, but he is intercepted by Hacker, who damages his wristcom so he can't call the Skyvault. He captured Max, but he outwits Hacker and runs away. Max ends up finding Isabel and frees her, and while they're running away to safety, they overhear Storm and Terror planning to unleash a big tornado in New York City to destroy the elusive location of Centrum, the Centurions' hideout. Meanwhile, at Skyvault, Jake and Ace are worried that they haven't heard back from Max when they receive the signals for the biggest tornado ever. They suit up and go to NYC, while Max, now outside of Storm's clutches, tries to fix his wristwatch. Isabel tells him that to destroy the tornado, they need to destroy both Weathermaster and Storm's helmet. However, once Max does that, he realizes that the tornado is still not diminishing. That's when Isabel comes up with the plan: destroy the tornado from its center. Luckily, Isabel's plan worked, and the Centurions were able to completely diminish the tornado. Episode 8. Denver is down. Somewhere, a blonde man is tracking a shipment of plutonium and asking for his people to attack it. Meanwhile, the Centurions are called for help there in Colorado, Denver. They arrive, and soon enough, they've beaten the perpetrators who were working for Terra. As it turns out, this was a mere distraction, and Terra is up to something else. Man, the guy never knows when to quit. Soon enough, the whole city started to shake, and as the Centurions panicked and went to a higher ground, they noticed that the whole of Denver was sinking underground into a cavern. The Centurions are left with no choice but to look into this grave matter, as they can't pinpoint what Terra really wants. However, the city has a dome over it, making sneaking with their exoframes difficult. Thus, the Centurions decide to sneak into Denver through a mining tunnel that connects to the city proper. However, expecting an intrusion, Terra sends his traumatizers to check all the open tunnels. As the Centurions walked into the mining shaft, the deeper they went, the higher the temperatures increased. At that moment, they're attacked by Terra's cyborgs, but they manage to defeat them and get inside the cavern where Denver now is. Meanwhile, Terra is planning to use every person in the city to make human cyborgs. He first experimented with the blonde guy and his subordinates, merging them into a cyborg. With this success, he orders the blonde man to round up every human in the city. As the perpetrators line up the humans, the trio watches them from a distance and realizes what Terra plans to do. The Centurions try to save as many people as they can, but are overwhelmed by their enemies as they don't own their exoframes now. The blonde man in his cyborg form drives the Centurions into a sewer system and sets it on fire. However, their quick thinking saves them. After that, they emerge from the other side. They see their exoframes have been hung high up on a tower. As they climb, however, they're spotted by the perpetrators, but somehow they manage to grab their exoframes before the tower collapses. Now, the Centurions, suited up in the exoframes, easily deal with the perpetrators, but Doc Terra refuses to let them win and releases the lava flow which is headed straight to Denver. The Centurions dug a big hole to divert the lava and ensured it'd flow under the Denver city, not through it. Ingenious, really. With the lava's force, the city is once again rising, joining the upper world. Episode 9, Micro Menace. A satellite named Titanic is astride an asteroid and is passing by the sky vault. However, soon enough, Doc Terra with his Dominion arrives. He uses his cyborgs to attack the Titanic, but the Centurions come to their rescue. As the cyborgs push past Titanic's security, the Centurions beam down there and take care of the cyborg menaces. Sensing imminent defeat, Doc Terra makes his escape. Crystal Kane gets confirmation from Dr. Emerson that the teleporting asteroid circuit is ready to be picked up. Apparently, the research lab devised a special circuit that has the secret location of the asteroid. The scene shifts, and we see a trio of Doc Terra's henchmen. The leader is called the Executioner, attacking the very same research lab. They use a sleeping gas to get past the guards and lock up the real Dr. Emerson. Then, just before Jake arrives to get the circuit, he swaps it and takes the real one with him. Jake beams back to Sky Vault, where preparations are being made for installing the new circuit. However, once Jake inserts it, their computer system starts to go haywire. They effectively cannot control the asteroid which is hurtling speedily towards Paris. Ace, being the aerial specialist, suits up to stop the asteroid from hitting the Eiffel Tower. However, once he changed its course, the asteroid was headed for the waters of London. This calls for aid from Max, who suits up and carries Ace with him underwater. They arrive at a castle, the Executioner's castle, and lose contact with the Sky Vault due to the force field that surrounds the place. Meanwhile, Jake and Crystal realize how much bad news this Executioner is and tries to bring down the force field. However, the computer won't allow it and has practically taken them as hostages. Jake, though, had sent his dog to help the other two Centurions. As for the duo, they figured that if they could reach the control room, they could switch off the power and take out the faulty circuit. But as always, it is easier said than done. As they try to reach the control room, several security robots attack them, but using their ingenuity, they manage to escape. However, things are not as smooth for Max and Ace though. They're ambushed by the Executioner's men and are strapped on an electric torture equipment. Thankfully, their exoframes are sucking in most of the electricity, so they're unharmed for the moment. Back at Sky Vault, using Lucy as a decoy crystal, and Jake effectively succeed in taking out the faulty circuit. Meanwhile, At his castle, the executioner promises Doc Terror that he'll have the Superium ready. As for Max and Ace, Shadow arrives and frees them, and leads them towards the control center. He then swiftly damages the force field, giving Crystal the leeway to beam the Centurions their suit and Jake down to the executioner's castle. Once suited up in their assault weapons, it doesn't take much effort for our heroes to bring down the evil executioner and foil Doc Terror's plans. Episode 10, Attack of the Plant Borg. The 10th episode begins with Crystal getting a signal about 6 meteorites heading straight for Earth and Skyvault. She quickly calls in the Centurions, assigning each one a location to intercept the falling meteorites. Jake is headed for Los Angeles, Max for Chicago, and Ace for New York City, while Crystal handles the meteorite headed for Skyvault. As the meteorite comes hurtling, the Centurions eradicate them. However, Crystal, while eliminating one, is unable to hit the other, though since it is headed for the desert, she figures it will be okay. Doc Terror, who is monitoring the meteorites, finds something living on it. With a closer examination, it turns out to be an alien plant that is visibly dangerous. He takes it back with him and develops a plant Borg. Terror then tasks his daughter to implant the plant Borg on Shadow, who'll spread it to the Centurions' headquarters. As Jake takes Shadow for a walk, he bumps into a mysterious woman who is Amber in disguise. Once her task is done, she leaves, while Jake returns to Centrum with Shadow, who decides to play fetch with a mouse. Leaving Shadow to his antics, Ace goes up to the headquarters. However, soon the plant Borg materializes and attacks Shadow. He cuts it, but sees another growing from it. He escapes, however, soon enough the whole city is overwhelmed with plant Borgs. Jake, who wants to look for his dog, is charged with these plant Borgs, and after a hefty scuffle, he escapes with his dog, long enough to return to Centrum's control room. Ace is called to remedy the situation while Max looks into any possible weaknesses of the thing. They realize that one Borg is bigger than the others, and this mother plant Borg controls them. To destroy it would mean to destroy all others. The Centurions soon suit up and leave for the mother plant Borg and fight it. Crystal says the weakness is in the head and to aim for it. With a little help from our canine friend Shadow, they eradicate the mother plant Borg, thus nullifying all the others. Episode 11, Battle Beneath the Ice. Things start off with a meteorite crashing into the cold waters of the Arctic. The Sea Lab is alerted to pick up the meteorite. However, another person seems to have the new meteorite within their sight, Doc Terror. He sends Meko to intercept it along with some sub-Borgs. Unfortunately for him though, the Centurion Max arrives and foils their plan and safely helps the Sea Lab take the meteorite inside. Meanwhile, the other 2 Centurions are spending time with a Sea Lab member, Maley. Max, on the other hand, decides to stay on board the Sea Lab for the time being to avoid any repercussions. Maley returns to Sea Lab after spending some time away from it, and the Centurions and her come across a new installation, Mark I AI prototype, a mega computer that has its own intelligence. Meanwhile, Doc Terror has figured out that the meteorite had some alien virus in it and is desperate to have it. The Sea Lab, though, is having its own set of problems, such as when it resurfaced, it faced issues submerging again. However, with the help of Ace, they were underwater again. This time though, the person looking into the meteorite felt something off about the thing, but chalked it up to tiredness. Later, a part of the alien virus finds itself embedded into the AI computer, which gives it the practical rule of every machine in Sea Lab. It ejected a missile which was caught by Meko and brought back to Terror, who confirmed that there is an alien virus that now controls Sea Lab. He orders Meko to infiltrate the place and bring him back the virus. Meanwhile, the residents of Sea Lab are facing a tough fight against all the computer-run machines and decide to evacuate the citizens of Sea Lab before crashing the floating city. The episode ends with the Sea Lab being free of virus but utterly destroyed and in need of a rebuild. As for fans, this alien virus will be again explored in the latter part of the series.
Exit.
Episode 12, Operation Starfall. Ace is on the moon checking the security of Lunar City. One of the workers is showing Ace their progressions when he remarks it isn't necessary to check their security because there is nothing of value here to Doc Terror. Suddenly, they are attacked by who else but Doc Terror's strappers. Ace quickly contacts Crystal, who can barely hear him due to some interference. She, however, uses the remaining of the beaming pod's charge to beam Ace his assault weapons. Ace fights valiantly, but since no man is an island, island, is overwhelmed by Terra's forces and captured. Crystal contacts the other two Centurions about Ace's communication gap when Terra appears on a broadcast message and says the Earth to surrender or he'll destroy a place called Zardosa in 12 hours. True to his words, Terra launched a capsule with a meteorite on it on Zardosa. Thankfully though, the Centurions had already evacuated the place, avoiding loss of human life. On the other hand, Terra orders Lunix to eliminate the Centurion aka Ace. However, as soon as he is ejected into open space, the Skyvault miraculously picks him up and saves him. Doc Terra is not done though. He plans to cause a disturbance at the San Andreas fault line, causing extreme mass destruction. The Centurions though are not diving head first. This time they're splitting up, with Max beaming down to the Lunar City underwater reservoir. He intended to be quiet, but ended up in a scuffle with some cyborgs. However, the Centurions easily wrenched back control of the Lunar City, but the problem of the meteorite remained. As Jake went after Lunix, Ace took a gamble on his life and aimed to stop the meteorite himself, and succeeded.
Watch it, that's public property!
Episode 13. Let the games begin. The episode begins with the Centurions fighting off a horde of cyborgs, but surprisingly, they're overpowered and defeated. Oh wait, it wasn't what you think it is though. It is a gaming contest where holographic images are used. The winner of the game is a 10-year-old boy named Randy Chang. Meanwhile, the real Centurions are watching the game, with Jake complaining about his pride being hurt. However, suddenly, the little boy is kidnapped by a real cyborg, and the Centurions charge after them. Doc Terra wants the boy to work for him. The Centurions are attacked by decoy robot Borgs as Terra uses the distraction to take the boy away. He disguises himself as not to spook the boy and gives him a brand new holo machine to play with. Meanwhile, the Centurions had located Terra's hideout, and as they came barging in, Doc Terra asked Randy to play. Unbeknownst to the little boy, he is attacking real Centurions this time. Randy is good at his game, and soon he corners and captures the Centurions. Doc Terra boasts in front of them that he has high hopes for the boy's intelligence. Randy overhears the conversation, and once Terra leaves, decides to help the Centurions. He apologizes for his part and soon frees them. They try to figure out a way out of Terra's hideout after they realize their wrist comms are broken. However, Terra, anticipating this, sends his traumatizers to capture them, but their wits help them defeat it without any assault weapons. As Max tries to fix his wrist comm, Randy is taken by Terra and put into a cyborg. This new variation would merge Randy with the cyborg with each passing minute. The Centurions finally connect with the Skyvault, and as they fight the new cyborg with Randy in it, they're getting overwhelmed. But the downfall for Terra is that no matter how strong Randy's gaming skills are, he's still a child with temper issues. He throws a tantrum, almost attacking Terra, but he escapes. The Centurions use this temper issue to their advantage and end up saving Randy. Episode 14. Firebird. It starts off with an archaeologist named Rebecca looking into a map that contains the location of a Firebird. However, Rebecca faces another tragedy and begins to question whether she might need the assistance of Max Ray. Once the Centurions arrive, she describes how the Firebird belongs to the ancient Mayan civilization. Her guide, Khotan, is a Mayan and he is helping her. However, when the Centurions arrive, he goes away without properly greeting them. Soon after he leaves, a group of Mayan natives attack them, but the Centurions fend them off. The scene shifts and we see the guide is in leagues with Doc Terra and he sends Hacker to assist Khotan. Meanwhile, Rebecca goes digging with the Centurions for the Firebird, with Khotan and Hacker following them. When Rebecca's group comes across the Firebird, they realize it is an air shuttle from ancient times. Hacker attacks them, forcing them to flee, while Khotan and he take control of the Firebird. The Centurions barely come out when they see the Firebird in its full glory. They try to bring it down, but it has a force field that even the Centurions' weapons can't penetrate. However, it does have its limits and needs to be recharged. Meanwhile, Rebecca hears that they need green gems to recharge them, and the exhibit in Mexico City has them. As Cotan goes to steal it, he is confronted by the Centurions. He is almost overwhelmed when Hacker comes in with and saves him along with the gems. The Centurions track them down, dressed up in the guise of native Mayans, and successfully steal the gems. However, Cotan reveals the ones Centurions took aren't real. Thus, Hacker chases the Centurions and almost corners them in their almost invulnerable Firebird when Max notices the force field can be brought down by water. He then asks Ace to push it toward the water, and he breaks through the force field. As Hacker escapes, the Centurions finally sink the Firebird and arrest Cotan.
One party I'll have to crash.
Episode 15, Cold Calculations. The Centurions are transporting a load of silver to a facility in Geneva. However, they're attacked on the way, but the Centurions manage to round up the perpetrators. They nevertheless are unaware that Amber, Doc Terra's daughter, is taking pictures of them to duplicate their assault weapons. So, when they steal the silver, it would seem that a Centurion did it. Silver has become a rare material now, and the ever-depleting number has made their batch of silver the very last one. They're stored in the Genevan facility, which has high-class security. They cannot be easily breached, or so the overseer of the facility, Colin Montague, says. That night, though, the facility is attacked and the silver is stolen. The culprit seems to be Jake Rockwell, but the other Centurions and Crystal vehemently refuse to believe that. They start investigating the matter. Meanwhile, Amber plans to abduct Jake and make him side with her. The Centurions suspect Colin Montague to be in league with Doc Terra, which turns out to be true. As for Colin, however, Doc Terra double-crosses him and sends a cyborg to attack him. Ace, who is following Colin, saves him with a little help from Max. They interrogate Colin and he tells them Doc Terra's location. Meanwhile, Amber urges Jake to join him and keeps him under watch. But Hacker soon informs Terra about his daughter, who comes to warn her. Jake manages to free shake his guard and run. However, he is chased relentlessly by Terra. He is in fact cornered, but with a little help from Shadow, Jake escapes and makes contact with Crystal. Ace brings him to Max and they suit up to stop Terra from taking away the precious silver. Terra, though, always strives to have the last word and causes an avalanche, even though his daughter feels it is not right since the snow avalanche might hit the nearby village. The Centurions use their assault weapons to dig a big hole, much like they did with the lava back in episode 7, and stop the avalanche from ravaging the village. Episode 16, Return of Captain Steel. Doc Terra and Hacker are searching for a device called Doomstar, which is a powerful weapon from the past, and now is lost. They tracked it down to a remote island, Boku Island, where once they stepped off, the most intriguing thing happened. The natives were in awe of someone called Captain Steel, and at first, Terra thought it was him, but it was Hacker. The natives shower Hacker with the best of hospitality, while Doc Terra is thoroughly ignored. Can't be a good thing for his inflated ego. Meanwhile, the Centurions Jake and Ace were enjoying an off day when they're called back on Skyvault. Crystal shows the trio that on a remote island that is still untouched by modernity, a certain airship is there. No dice. It is Doc Terra's airship. They, thus, decide to check it out, and Ace goes in first. When he lands, he finds the island pretty ordinary, albeit beautiful. On the other hand, the chief of the tribe is alerted about Ace's presence, and Captain Steel says haltingly that they're his enemies. As a good host would do, they smoke Ace out with a hallucinating gas. Ace, thinking he is in danger, throws away his wristcom and uses his missiles before collapsing. When Crystal could not connect with Ace anymore, she sent the other two Centurions to search for him in Boku Island. Meanwhile, Terra is growing restless and subtly threatens Hacker to get his act together and search for what they are looking for. The chief then shows them to the shuttle, and they find the Doomstar there. As the Centurions arrive on the island, Crystal shares an interesting story about how the island natives believe that a certain Captain Steel would come and rule them, and that person is Hacker. Soon, Max and Jake are also caught up in the purple gas and are captured, but with the help of a native girl and then Luku, they manage to escape and get their assault weapons. Meanwhile, Terra and his companion Hacker are back at the airship when they see that the Centurions have escaped from their confinement. Terra sends his cyborgs after them as he tries to assemble the Doomstar strapper. The Centurions Centurions fight the cyborgs, but now presented with the new Doomstar Strapper, they're getting overwhelmed. But since Terra was planning to destroy the village on Boku Island, Hacker felt it was not right and secretly brought down the force field around the Strapper. This made defeating the Doomstar Strapper much easier. The episode ends with the villagers offering their gratitude to the good old Centurions. Episode 17, 3 Strikes and You're Dead. It starts off with a group of cyborgs chasing a famous baseball player, Blaster McGraw. While he manages to shake 3 off, he is caught off guard by another. Since then, he has been missing, and one of his teammates is asking the Centurions Jake and Ace for help. Ace is friends with McGraw and also happens to be overly invested in the finale game, hence he readily agrees. They get a lead that a gambler called Wheel might be involved. The Centurion duo visits the Wheel's casino undercover. There, they come across the most intriguing person, Amber. Yes, Doc Terra's daughter. She is going somewhere, and Ace decides to follow her. However, he is caught red-handed for snooping around by some robots, but he manages to trick them and continue following Amber. She is here to meet Wheel, and she informs that McGraw is safe on Turtle Island. Ace overhears the conversation and goes to find Jake. However, more robots are sent to capture him, since Wheel has already identified him as a Centurion. Ace, however, escapes and rendezvous with Jail at the parking lot. Ace shares his information with Crystal, who tracks down Turtle Island. It was once the holding of Doc Terra. Ace is determined to go, but since Max is in a secret meeting, Jake says to wait. But Ace says the final game is soon, and he'll go alone if he has to. However, no one is keen to take Ace to the island, so he uses a parachute to go there. Once on the island, he sneaks into the hideout and finds his friend Blaster McGraw. But when he tries to retrace and escape, he has to fight Amber's cyborgs and Wheel's robots. However, while he manages to defeat Amber's cyborgs, Wheel's robots with orders to kill are harder to eliminate. It is then that Amber shoots the robots and says that Terra has placed a bet and he hates to lose, so Blaster would stay for a while there. Suddenly, Wheel sends in more robots to destroy the base. Ace manages to contact Crystal and fly Blaster away to safety. He then starts dealing with the robots when the other 2 Centurions join the fray and the odds tip in their favor. They finally carry Blaster to the game, however. Wheel, being annoyingly persistent, sends his robots to disrupt the game so he can steal the money. However, the Centurions foil his plan, and when he tries to finally escape, Amber has him. Episode 18, Double Agent. Ace and a lady are flying on a paragliding aircraft. Oh, so romantic. It is his turn to jump, but before that can happen, a thief steals the lady's purse and dives away. Ace, as chivalrous as always, goes after the thief and takes back the lady's purse. Meanwhile, a scientist is testing his new invention, which can transfer the brain material from one living organism to another, a device that would be dangerous in the wrong hands, but you can't spell danger without terror, right? So it is Terra's companion Hacker who comes to steal it. The Centurions are tasked with transporting an XM-2000 to safety, with Ace flying the aircraft carrying it. However, Terra comes in, creating chaos that the Centurions easily subdue. When our gallant Ace goes to accompany a lady home, that lady turns out to be Amber in disguise. She abducts Ace and brings him back to his father. There, Doc Terra forces the scientist to use his new device to transfer Ace's mind into Hacker's, and vice versa. Hacker, now in Ace's body, goes back to the Centurions with Amber in disguise. They plan to steal the XM-2000 right under the Centurion's nose. Meanwhile, Ace, who is in Hacker's body, is thrown into a prison cell with the scientist. However, using his wit, he escapes, with the scientist in tow, to find Hacker and transfer back to his own body. But when there, due to his appearance, he is mistaken as Hacker and is attacked by Jake and the fake Ace. The real Hacker and Amber take off with the XM-2000 and the Centurions give chase. Even the real Ace goes after them, planning to lead them straight into Doc Terra's hideout. The Centurions, upon their arrival, face an entourage of Terra's cyborgs, but they get past easily enough. Meanwhile, the real Ace has got hold of his proxy, dragging him back to the scientist to change back. Ace contacts Crystal, who is shocked to see Hacker, but Ace lets the scientist explain, and soon enough, she is lending them enough power to change Ace back into his own body. The Centurions then go after Terra, who tries to escape, but fortunately, like every time, is defeated.
Fire Force. Now, Crystal.
Episode 19, Child's Play. The episode begins with a group of teenagers chasing another boy, Jimmy Turner. Oh, you know, your old-fashioned bullying. But why? Well, Jimmy says he has a particular psychic ability and they don't buy into it. Moreover, they want Jimmy to be away from a girl called Gina. However, Jimmy uses his ability to avoid them and runs away. Meanwhile, Jake is tasked to give a seminar lecture at a high school, the same high school where Jimmy is. There, after the lecture, he finds a group of boys bullying another teenager, Jimmy, but Jake breaks it up. Meanwhile, Doc Terror is stealing plasma fusion fuel from a ship, but as soon as tries to take the ship away, Jake is there to stop him. Jake blows out their strapper covers, and since their energy is fast draining from carrying a big ship, they decide to drop and look for the fuel somewhere else. However, there are 2 people trapped inside the ship, and Jake makes it his priority to save them instead of going after Terror. Later on, Jimmy finds Jake's Wild Weasel weapon system and uses his psychic powers to control it. When Crystal tries to locate it, she realizes someone else has it. She immediately tells Jake, who suspects it's in the high school. He finds Jimmy using it to scare the boys who are bullying him. However, Jimmy refuses to give it back to Jake until he has shown it to Gina. Jake goes after Jimmy, but to no avail. Jimmy takes Gina for a spin, but she says Jimmy is acting like a jerk and runs away. Meanwhile, the Centurions now together are looking for Jimmy, but it is Doc Terror who finds him and plans to use him for his own benefit. Terror orders Jimmy to fire at a facility. However, Ace finds them and alerts the others. They arrive in time, but Doc Terror escapes with Jimmy in tow. Back at Terror's airship, Jimmy refuses to help Terror anymore but is threatened. Terror says that if he wants to see his girlfriend again, he will do what Terror wants. Naturally, Jimmy goes again with Hacker, but this time Jimmy is reluctant. He uses Wild Weasel to blast through and starts a fire. He tells Jake that Terror has his girlfriend, and Ace, hearing that, goes to save her. While Ace handles that, Jake uses his freeze gun to put out the fire Jimmy created. The episode ends with Jimmy apologizing to Jake, who says sometimes people, especially children, need to make mistakes to learn. Episode 20, Terror on Ice. The episode takes off with the Centurions fighting off perpetrators while they attack a ship. You know, their usual missions. Once their aim hits a frozen mountain top, they pay that mishap no mind and continue to fend off perpetrators. After the fight is over, in their favor nonetheless, they enjoy an after party. However, suddenly the party is over. A giant dinosaur, a T-Rex, hatches from the frozen mountain and goes on a rampage. The Centurions use their assault weapons to stop it, but to no avail. They're forced to evacuate and flee before the dinosaur can cause real harm. Meanwhile, Doc Terror is watching this and hoping to get the dinosaur for himself to make it into one of his new cyborgs. The next day, the Centurions try to track the creature once more. Ace uses himself as bait to draw the dinosaur, but suddenly a snow avalanche causes the dinosaur to go under the ice while the Centurions are washed away. The dinosaur, though, lands at Doc Terror's base, and before it causes any damage, he freezes the dinosaur. He then puts him under lock and key. However, Amber, his daughter, finds the creature magnificently beautiful and feels it is a pity if it is turned into a cyborg. She feeds the dinosaur but forgets to keep it confined. Using the opportunity, the dinosaur escapes, taking Amber with it. Meanwhile, the Centurions were talking with a scientist from the Natural History Museum when he was rudely interrupted by Doc Terror. He says he knows where the dinosaur is and how to capture it, but he needs their help to rescue his daughter, Amber. The Centurions track the dinosaur and go after it. Max tells Ace and Jake to lure it to the waterfront after rescuing Amber. However, once they have freed Amber from the literal clutches of the dinosaur, Hacker tries to interrupt, but to no avail. The Centurions then lure the creature into the water and freeze it before it can cause any chaos. Amber is worried, though, that they'd kill it, but the Centurions reassure her they have a plan for it too. They took the creature to a remote island and placed a force field around it to protect it from the world and vice versa. Moreover, the scientist from the Natural History Museum also informs them that the dinosaur is a female, and they see an egg hatch with a baby male dinosaur in it, hinting at endless possibilities.
Now the game's over, Centurion, for keeps! Ha!
Episode 21, That Old Black Magic. The Centurions are playing a game of chase with Hacker. First, Max tries to catch him, but he swiftly changes onto road chase, but Jake is there to trail him. Even then, Hacker tries to shake them off by taking them to air. But well, our aerial specialist, Ace, is there and almost knocks Hacker into a corner. Hacker goes through the dome of Phoenix Theatre where a lady in white is performing. As the audience flees, Hacker uses the lady as his trump card for escape. However, the lady is no ordinary, and she ends up saving Ace. She introduces herself as Cassandra Cross. Later, when Hacker returns to Doc Terror, he reiterates what happened, and now Doc wants Cassandra to fulfill his plans. A week has passed, and there is no news of Terror or Hacker. Meanwhile, Ace is dating Cassandra Cross, unknowingly that she is a witch. Doc Terror, though, has all the preparations done to abduct Ace and Cassandra. He creates a proxy chaos to draw out the Centurions' attention while he attacks Ace and Cassandra. He takes them hostage, hoping that Cassandra with her magic will play nice. Meanwhile, the Centurions have already overcome the distraction and are searching for their friend. They track them underground in Manhattan. As Ace comes to consciousness, Doc Terror tells him that Cassandra is a good old witch, and she'll help him to destroy Manhattan if she values Ace's life. However, the other two Centurions arrive at the precise moment, and Cassandra uses her powers to free Ace. Together, they attack Terror, who realizes that he can't fight the Centurions and a witch at the same time, and escapes. The episode ends on a bittersweet note, as Cassandra, who has her limits of using her magic, gives Ace a white rose as her parting gift.
They are hole in one.
Episode 22, Max Ray, Traitor. Our beloved Centurions are receiving a rather not-so-welcome greeting from Dr. Powell. She does not require Centurions to protect her facility, but the Centurions unrelentingly says that Doc Terror has been targeting facilities like theirs for a while, and the World Council thus feels it necessary for the Centurions to check them. Powell gives the Centurions a walkthrough when they come across a room that is fully flooded. There, a janitor identifies an unauthorized box which turns out to be a bomb. Dr. Powell warns them that if the bomb goes out, the antimatter will melt everything in sight. The Centurions tries to prevent it, but as the inevitable often strikes, the bomb goes all out, blasting the antimatter which spreads and melts everything in sight. The Centurions suit up in their exoframes and assault weapons and split to take care of the problem. While Jake and Ace try to stop the antimatter from above, Max does it from underwater. However, both sides encounter problems, but Max has it especially rough. So he decides to ask for help from Jake and Ace, but the duo also have their hands full and asks Max to wait a little. Seeing the possibility of permanent doom, Max thinks his way out of it, but when he comes up, he holds a major grudge against the other two, a grudge that is strong enough to make him quit being a Centurion. Dr. Powell, using the opportunity, asks Max to join another facility that she's in charge of, which is making a time travel device. However, there he witnesses Powell roaming around after hours, raising his suspicion. He follows her and finds that's up to something. The time travel device blows off, sending alarms blaring and alerting the Centurions. Max hides Powell, and when the Centurions arrive, he deliberately says that they're late again, like always. Once they go away, Max asks Powell to come out and says he'll cooperate with her because he has some score to settle. Max then calls the Centurions and tells them about how he has information about the gremlin and sends them coordinates to meet. However, once Ace and Jake arrive, Max attacks them and takes them with him to Gremlin headquarters, a garbage disposal facility. Once inside, the masked person he believes to be Powell reveals that the real Powell is held captive by them, and he reveals himself to be the janitor who found the bomb. However, their surprise pales in front of the Centurion's surprise. Max never turned traitor. Together, they imprison the members of Gremlin, but their leader plays hard to get. He uses the facility's defense system to attack them while he flees, but Max eventually catches him. The episode ends with Max telling his friends that the charade was only known to Crystal and the World Council since it was a top priority.
Pay my price, or the world will end. The decision is yours.
Episode 23, Crack the World. The episode picks up on a mining process being undertaken by the C-Lab. A duo of C-Lab members are on a mining shuttle, however. Tragedy strikes and they are buried within the seafloor. The new director, Dr. Regulus, prohibits Melee from contacting the Centurions for help. However, Melee still urges the Centurions to arrive in secret and help the miners. Taking that as their cue, Jake goes there first and asks for backup. Meanwhile, Hacker is setting up bombs along the mining line within the Mariana Trench as ordered by Doc Terror. Since the C-Lab is too busy rescuing the miners, they won't notice until it's too late. However, The Centurions arrive and make it their priority to extract the two miners. Doc Terror, frustrated, tries to sabotage them, but somehow the Centurions manage to rescue the miners to safety. Nevertheless, Dr. Regulus is not happy about the intrusion. He warns Maylee that it had cost her job, but she says the priority is to save the miners. Visibly angry, Dr. Regulus stomps out of the room. Max asks Maylee to show them their mining operations. Once Maylee describes their intent, Max thinks something is amiss because the mining is done on a dangerous fault line and goes to check the trench himself. Doc Terror's bomb explodes right when Max is checking it out and buries him in rubble. Meanwhile, Dr. Regulus is missing and they suspect him to be a spy of Terror. They see him leave the C-Lab just when a seaquake rocks their city. Terror later extracts Max from the rubble and holds him captive. He then broadcasts an ultimatum to the world: pay him $1 billion or he'll blow up 2 more bombs, cracking the world. The Centurions worry about Max, but they figure that if they can know the location of Doc Terror, they can hit 2 birds with 1 stone. The best bet for them to find his location, however, would be to track their spy, Dr. Regulus. Ace thus goes after him, but when he stops the shuttle that Regulus used to escape, he finds out Regulus wasn't the spy after all, but Dr. Wallace. He said Terror paid him, and since he was in desperate need of money, he went along with the plan. The Centurions use Wallace to tap Doc Terror's coordinates and beam themselves to his hideout. They find Max and together they foil Terror's plans. However, Terror escapes, intending to set off the bombs manually, but Max soon disrupts that plan too, leaving Terror and Hacker to do nothing but escape.
Complaints, complaints. Fire heat-seeking missiles.
Episode 24, The Incredible Shrinking Centurions. It all begins with Max chasing Meko, one of Terror's creations. But as soon as Meko is arrested, an officer comes and says Intertech Computer has issued Max's arrest warrant instead. Confused, but with no way to contradict it, Max goes along, but is bailed out by Jake later. However, once he is back at Centrum, Crystal informs them about a malfunctioning disorder of the Intertech computer and asks the Centurions to look into it. She says a certain physical bug is affecting the computer and not a technical issue. The Centurions arrive at Geneva, where the computer is, and are shrunken into tiny forms before being beamed into the computer. Meanwhile, Doc Terror is already inside, with Hacker, and is heading towards the main central unit. The little Centurions traverse through the computer, but are attacked by Terror's strappers and traumatizers. However, without their weapon systems, all they can do is run and take cover, while tricking the cyborgs into destroying themselves. Once that's done, the little trio again starts to go through the computer, which seems like an endless maze to them. Luckily for them, Crystal contacts them, and Max asks her to beam Jake and Ace's assault weapons. The Centurions then track the central unit and head over there. However, Doc Terror is ahead of them, and he is bent on destroying the central unit. Nevertheless, the Centurions arrive and do their best to stop Doc, but he has already done the damage. The computer goes into self-defense mode and starts to attack indiscriminately. However, the Doc uses the chaos as a cover to run, while leaving the Centurions to clear the mess. Naturally, the computer system's defenses overwhelm the tiny Centurions, but they're saved when Crystal decides to join them. Together, they hatch a plan to repair the AI unit, while Ace distracts their attackers. With luck on their side, they tactfully repair the AI unit, which in turn stops the defensive systems from attacking the Centurions. The episode ends with the Intertech computer being repaired from the inside, and Ace scoring another date.
What the? Max, Jake, I'm being attacked.
Episode 25, Live at 5. We open up in outer space as Doc Terror and his companion Hacker are trying to steal the solar mirror. Their rendezvous is interrupted by Ace, who forces them to retreat for now. Meanwhile, a television agency director, Mr. Maddox, is telling one of his reporters, Jenny, how the Centurions are bad news as they're leeching off the taxpayers' money. Taking the bait, Jenny goes on to report something about the Centurions. Mr. Maddox, however, has fed her false information on behalf of Doc Terror. Jenny and Ace once attended the same college, and thus, when Jenny asks for an interview with Ace, he doesn't feel anything suspicious. Later, when the news is on, they expect Jenny to rave about the Centurions and their line of work, but in fact, the exact opposite happens. Jenny announces how the Centurions are painting Doc Terror as the biggest villain when they're using the public money to live a luxurious life. Hearing this, Ace is upset, and when he contacts Jenny, she says all she did was uphold the truth. Suddenly, Crystal contacts all the Centurions about a possible location of Doc Terra, Vector 7 hydroelectric plant. But when the Centurions get there, they cannot find Doc Terra anywhere. They were about to go back, thinking it was a false alarm, when beams from beyond the waterfall headed straight for them. Ace shoots back, but his missiles are somehow diverted towards a nearby ship. Even though Max saves them, the public trust falters about the Centurions. Let's backtrack a little. Even though Doc Terra was not visible, he was there beyond the waterfalls with Hacker, and he planted a device on the ship to divert Ace's missiles. Terra is doing all he can to discredit the Centurions. Later, Ace finds Jenny and brings her back to Centrum, where he shows where the taxpayers' money goes and how dangerous Doc Terra is. However, he and the other Centurions are again called on a wild goose chase by Terra's strappers, who are hidden from view because of the stealth mode. They manage to eliminate the strappers, but in the process destroyed a building in construction. The World Council, naturally, is very disappointed in them and disbands the Centurions. However, Ace again goes to find Jenny, only to realize she isn't answering her phone. In truth, Jenny has been kidnapped by Doc Terra as she is a liability. Plus, Terra wants her to broadcast that he is using the solar mirror to make a dangerous weapon. Ace tracks Jenny. She tells him Doc Terra's plan. Ace reassures Jenny that he'll take care of it. He goes after Doc Terra and intercepts his plans once again. The episode ends with Jenny redacting everything she said about the Centurions and proclaiming their heroism.
Believe everything you see, Terror. But there's one thing you can believe.
Episode 26, The Mummy's Curse. As the title suggests, it all begins in Egypt, where an archaeologist and his team are digging for the pyramid, which is the resting place of the lost pharaoh, very Indiana Jones-esque. However, the workers are spooked by the stories of jackals who have come to steal the souls of the perpetrators that disturb the eternal sleep of the pharaoh. They are scared and decide to abandon the project, leaving the archaeologist, Dr. Sloan, alone. He contacts Crystal to send him some help. The Centurions thus find themselves in Egypt. Ace, who is weirdly interested in mummies, tells his friends that this mummy was buried with a pack of 6 giant bodyguards and that his pyramid disappeared the day after he was laid to rest. Jake scoffs at it, saying it was probably a sandstorm. Meanwhile, the archaeologist invites them inside his working space and shows them the digging plans and the scepter of Ibis. Later, Jake, who was taking Shadow for a walk, finds himself in a bit of a scuffle when he follows a voice to a nearby cave entrance, which turns out to be a tunnel. It slops downwards, and they come across Dr. Sloan doing something suspicious. However, he is ambushed by Doc Terra and Hacker, but fortunately, Shadow escapes. Dr. Sloan explains that since the government was going to take away all of his discoveries for exhibiting it in the State Museum, he decided to join hands with Terra, who promised to let him keep his discoveries in exchange for the 6 mummy guards. Terra plans to destroy Cairo first, then the world using those mummies. He throws Jake into confinement, but using his wits he escapes and finds himself in front of the sarcophagi of the lost pharaoh. Meanwhile, Shadow, who had escaped, was being chased by cyborg jackals, but he jumped into the water to save himself. Later, Ace finds him and deduces Jake is in trouble. Thus, he and Max, along with Shadow, try to retrace Jake's steps when they see a pyramid rising from below and 6 mummified bodyguards come to life. Doc Terra uses the scepter of Ibis to control them and blast the Centurions. He thinks he won. However, Crystal, the genius woman, beamed them up not a moment too soon. Jake, on the other hand, was accosted by the mummy guarding the pharaoh, but somehow he had awakened the child pharaoh, probably Tutankhamun, but who knows. The pharaoh promises he knows a way to stop Doc Terra and tells Jake to take him to Cairo, which is being ravaged by Terra and his mummies. Meanwhile, Dr. Sloan, whose consciousness struck at the last moment, refused to let Terra destroy the city of Cairo, but he was thrown off by Terra. The Centurions, on the other hand, were fighting tooth and nail to save the city and fend off the mummies when the pharaoh arrived. The pharaoh urged the children of Ibis to pursue peace and wait for a better age. The mummies, naturally, listened to their true master, but Terra, refusing to accept defeat, tried to use the scepter, but the child pharaoh overwhelmed him and restored the ravaged city. He himself went back to his eternal sleep once again, hoping to awaken at a better dawn of humanity.
Yours!
Episode 27, Counterclock Crisis. It is a fine day, and the Centurions are leisurely gliding through a picturesque landscape of farms and animals. They're headed to Lakery Reclamation Plant. It was something Max had designed before he became a Centurion. The plant helps irrigate fallow land so that farmers can easily farm the land for cultivation. However, as with everything, Doc Terror is there to attack the plant to consolidate his power on the East Coast. But our trio of brave men suit up in their exoframes and assault weapons and stop the attack promptly. Back at Skyvault, the Centurions and Crystal are simply talking when Lucy accidentally hits Jake with a sonic ray. Somehow, he is transported 24 hours into the future and he sees Doc Terror and his daughter walking through the Skyvault, while the place lies in tatters and Crystal is unconscious. But just as suddenly he was transferred into the future, he was transferred back into the present. When Jake tries to tell his friends what he saw, they very naturally don't believe him, and he takes off, hoping to find a way to stop what's coming. Meanwhile, Doc Terror's cyborgs are wreaking havoc, and the Centurions who were searching for Jake changed their priorities from Jake to stopping the cyborgs. However, in reality, the cyborg attacks are just decoys to get the Centurions out of Skyvault. With the help of Amber, Terror wants to take control of Skyvault. However, Jake, who was not with the other Centurions, tracked down some seal he saw on Amber's back when he was transported in the future to Starcross Industries. There, he overheard their plans of disguising their aircraft with the orbiting hospital's shuttle so that Crystal would give them unobstructed entry to Skyvault. Jake quickly boarded the aircraft as it was headed to Skyvault. Meanwhile, the other two Centurions were finally able to eliminate all the cyborgs that were after them. Crystal, who is unaware of the situation, gives the fake orbiting hospital shuttle entry to the Skyvault, but soon Amber and Doc Terror burst from it and start laying waste to the Skyvault. Crystal tries to run and communicate with the others, but Amber destroys the communication system. Crystal heads to the main room, but Terror and Amber go after her. Jake, on the other hand, slowly comes out of his place and shoots the cyborgs, and as Terror and Amber try to use the Skyvault's arsenal, he comes and contradicts their plans. Meanwhile, the other two Centurions also arrive, and they chase Doc Terror and Amber out. However, as they are escaping, Ace tries his best to stop them, but just like always, our evil father-daughter duo escapes.
This better do the job.
Episode 28, Zombie Master. Another episode opens with the never-tiring Doc Terror attacking a transport carrying an important personality, a president. They request a little assistance from the Skyvault, and Crystal contacts Max about it. Max says to beam him there, along with Ace, but to leave Jake alone on his holiday. The duo of Centurions take care of Doc Terror's cyborgs and help the president. Meanwhile, Jake is enjoying a much-deserved break when he comes across a girl. She is running around scared because she has seen zombies. Jake takes her to the sheriff's office, and there the sheriff dismisses the idea. He says he can't have people panicked when the president's train would be passing through town. He also had called the girl's parents to come and pick her up. The girl in question, though, is addicted to a sound holographic device, and the sheriff thinks it's that which is causing her to see things. A classic case of people thinking when you're young, you know nothing. Jake decides to stick around just in case. However, when the night falls, he sees a group of people, the girl among them, walking like they're zombies. He contacts Crystal, and she sends Max and Ace to him. Together, they scout for something unusual when they come across a water body, but when Shadow excitedly goes in, he comes back, not wet. They immediately realize something's up. Max then discovers that the river is a holographic front to a tunnel. They go in and discover many people who are enthralled in a zombie daze and a few cyborg zombies. However, they locate the girl, but realize that she is not under the zombie effect. Max goes to see why, while Ace and Jake remain in the cave. However, they're discovered and they run out, but someone called the Zombie Master hits them with a device that enthralls them. Though, before Zombie Master can hit Max, he runs away with the girl. Meanwhile, Max learns from the girl that the Zombie Master is using a sonic ray device to scramble brain signals and turn humans into mindless zombies. The only reason the girl is safe is because she is using her sound holographic device. The Zombie Master had sent Ace and Jake to get Max, but using the sound holographic device they brought them back to their senses. Meanwhile, the zombie master intercepts the train with the president on it and turns them into zombies as a gift for Doc Terror. He hops on the train and goes with them. However, the Centurions are after him. Sensing danger, the zombie master cuts off the last two compartments of the train, which carries the president and his entourage. However, our water specialist, Max Ray, saves them. The Centurions arrested the zombie master, and the president once again thanked the Centurions for being the brave heroes that they are.
Stop it. There isn't enough time.
Episode 29, Malfunction. This time, Doc Terror and his cyborg companion, Hacker, are kidnapping a security personnel and replacing it with one of his imitation cyborgs. They plan to steal the X-150 this time. Meanwhile, the Centurions are tasked with transporting the missile which, once locked on a target, would never give up, and even Skyvolt's force field can't stop it. You can practically see why Doc Terror would want this weapon. Nevertheless, the Centurions would also join hands with their security head, Mr. Newman, who at first appears brisk. The Centurions reassure them that they can take the missile alone and with back routes to avoid any funny business. However, while transporting, they're attacked by Doc Terror's forces. They obviously fight tooth and nail, but this time, unfortunately, Ace is hit by one of the weapons from Terror's cyborgs. While he is lying unconscious, Hacker places a remote control system in his exoframe and runs away. Later, the other two Centurions find Ace and take him with them. Thankfully, the scene shifts, and the Centurions are within a facility discussing what to be done with Doc Terror when they're attacked again. This time, Terror is successful in stealing X-150 and taking it with him. Meanwhile, as the Centurions were fighting, Ace's suit kept on malfunctioning and firing in the wrong direction. Later, at Skyvolt, when Crystal checks on his assault weapon system, she finds no misgivings. Additionally, Crystal was also able to locate where Terror was hiding his new weapon X-150. The Centurions are beamed there, within the hollow of a mountain. The trio gets closer to the site of launching and is shocked to find Newman there. However, since Ace's suit is malfunctioning, it alerts Terror's group, and the Centurions have to retreat. While outside, they are attacked by Terror's cyborgs, and Ace's suit makes it difficult for him to fight. However, just before he can crash, Crystal beams him up. While checking his suit again, they realize it's the exoframe that is causing the problem, as it is rigged with a remote control system. Meanwhile, the Centurions try to scout the cave again, though this time, Ace isn't wearing his exoframe. He is asked to wait while the other two get close to the launch site again. However, Ace notices an entrance and finds himself face to face with Newman, who says he'd been kidnapped by Terror, and a duplicate cyborg is imitating him. Newman offers to show the way to Ace, but in reality, he is the cyborg who is leading Ace to a trap. Naturally, Ace is captured and thrown into a cell with the real Newman. Meanwhile, Doc Terror has launched his X-150, which would hit Skyvolt in exactly 5 minutes. However, Ace manages to contact Crystal and get his exoframe and escape. He then chases after the X-150 missile and manages to change its course and save the Skyvolt. The episode ends on a jovial note when Ace tries to flirt with Crystal. He never gives up on a chance ever, but she beamed him onto a snowscape land.
Easy come, easy go.
Episode 30, Broken Beams. Max is hard at work as he tries to prevent Doc Terror from stealing thermal energy. However, while transporting his assault weapon, the beaming pod starts glitching. Later, after the current mission was over, Crystal checked the beaming pod and realized that they were running low on an important part. So, she enlists the help of Max to acquire more of it, since without it, the beaming pod won't work. Max asks Ace and Jake to accompany him on a shopping trip. They visit a supermarket where a merchant says he's run out of crystals, shocking Jake and Ace. However, the merchant refused to share the information about who bought them in bulk, but Ace peeked at the name anyhow. Unsurprisingly, it was bought by a company backed by Doc Terror, meaning he is hoarding the stock of crystals. Fishy enough. However, they are told that there is a mining chain in Tibet for the same. Thus, Jake and Ace set off to Tibet to find it. However, mining is banned due to socio-political reasons. As Ace and Jake arrive in Tibet, they see a group of apostles denying miners the provision to work. However, the duo of Centurions sneak into the mountain, but are confronted by an elderly monk who says they need to stop trespassing on a sacred mountain. As he leads them away, he leads the two Centurions to an ambush where a heavy rock almost crushes them, but somehow they escape. Meanwhile, the monk is shown conversing with Doc Terror, who is ecstatic that without the crystals the Centurions can't fight. This naturally means his victory. The scene shifts and we see the Centurions scout the mountain again and see that there is mining being done, and large quantities of crystals are being carted. Jake pockets one, however. He is spotted by the monk. As they are being chased, Ace and Jake come across another room where the true monk is being kept. Apparently, the monk was kidnapped and was unjustly imprisoned. The Centurions free him and ask him for his help. As they run outside, they're attacked by cyborgs, but the two Centurions try their best to hold them off. Meanwhile, Max is tired of just sitting around and decides to go to the C lab. He manages to make a crystal temporarily, which he lets Ace and Jake know. Crystal, who was overhearing the conversation, asks Max to send it to her. Once Crystal fixes the beaming pod, the exoframes with their high-tech assault weapon systems are beamed to Jake and Ace, who easily defeat the cyborgs and the evil monk, who turns out to be an imitation cyborg. As the danger subsides, the original monk gives the Centurions a batch of crystals as a gesture of their gratitude.
Chewing on this.
Episode 31, The Chameleons' Sting. The episode picks up with another scientist trying a new formula on human subjects. This new formula turns them into a mutant lizard and scientist. Dr. Yates is planning to use these lizardmen. However, his plans are foiled by the Centurions who barge in and successfully stop him. However, before getting caught, Yates injected himself with the same lizard serum. Later, Ace gave testimony against Yates, who was given a prison sentence. Seeing their mission is over, both Ace and Jake plan a vacation to Monte Carlo. Dr. Yates is in prison, but his serum makes him capable of shape-shifting into anyone he wants, like a chameleon. To escape his imprisonment, he simply impersonated the judge who presided over his case. Once out, he goes where Ace and Jake are, Monte Carlo. While Ace is flying a plane with a new date, Jake is taking part in a racing competition. Meanwhile, Crystal informs Max that Yates has escaped from his prison. Yates has injected everyone on the racing committee with the lizard serum and rigged Jake's car brakes. So once the race commences, Jake loses control of his car and the entire road is lined up with landmines that keep going off. Ace, noticing his friend in trouble, jumps in and tries to help him. However, Yates causes an avalanche which makes Jake drive off a cliff. Later, Yates finds Jake and impersonates him before Ace can find him and abducts the real Jake. Ace arrives and greets Jake but feels something is off. They rendezvous at their centrum when Shadow comes and growls at Jake, further cementing Ace's unease. Later, he tells Max that Jake won't go to the medical, which seems a little off to him. Yates, impersonating Jake, implants a bomb at Centrum, but Ace catches it. However, Yates makes a fake excuse and slips off. Meanwhile, the real Jake is in prison and is trying his best to get out. The other two Centurions locate the supposed hideout of Yates and head out, but they face a giant robotic lizard. After a little scuffle, they realize that it was a planned attack, and since only two people knew about their attack on Yates's hideout, it must be Jake. They head back to Centrum immediately, but are caught in an explosion set up by Yates. Meanwhile, the real Jake was successful in escaping from his prison and getting back his exoframe. He contacts Crystal and asks her to beam back into Centrum. He arrives just in time to save Max and Ace, who are relieved to see the real Jake is back. As the notorious Yates tries to run off, the Centurions intercept him and defeat him. The episode ends with Max giving positive news to his friends. Yates's lizard serum now has an antidote and he has been cured. The bad news, however, that there won't be any vacation for Jake and Ace anymore. Another episode of how Doc Terror is not the only evil force out there. Episode 32, Film at 11. Today, Doc Terror is shooting down an intelligence satellite of the World Council. However, before he can take it back to Dominion, Ace McCloud arrives and destroys it. Unbeknownst to all, a young reporter is recording all of these, though she soon bumps into Ace and the reporter is none other than Jenny Rivers, Ace's old acquaintance. She wants to do an article on exposing Doc Terror. Ace, though, in a moment of spite, suggests that she might quit following him around and follow Terror if she wants to expose him. Jenny takes the idea to heart and enrolls to be in Terror's brigade. However, She dresses herself as a man to do so. She walks right into their camp and for all intents and purposes appears to be interested in Doc Terror's missions. Meanwhile, Ace goes to Jenny later to apologize for what he said, only to find a note saying she went to a training camp. Ace is reasonably worried. However, Jenny's group's first mission was to attack the Centurions, and while at it, Ace somehow recognizes Jenny. He feels he is responsible for how Jenny infiltrated into Terror's brigade. Meanwhile, Jenny asks certain questions to Terror, which makes him suspicious. He sends Hacker to look more into her background, only to discover she is a reporter. Terror plans to play a game of chase where Jenny is the target and everyone would hunt her. If she manages to evade them for 60 minutes, she wins. On the other hand, the Centurions track down the location of Terror's camp and go to rescue Jenny. However, Jenny is smart as she is tough and knows that her cover is up. She just hopes Ace finds her soon enough. Fortunately, the Centurions arrive at the camp and start to take care of the recruits. Jenny punches a guy who had come too close after Max knocks the guy's gun out of his hand. She then spots Ace, who picks her up and takes her with him to safety. In the end, most of the new recruits had surrendered, seeing the might of the Centurions. The episode ends with Jenny saying her boss loved her piece on Doc Terror, and now she is off to writing more exposé stories worldwide. Episode 33, Hacker Must Be Destroyed. The Centurion trio is in Japan, watching a new weapon experiment unfold, the Energy Enhancer. This new weapon could multiply the energy source to 1,000 times, making it an extremely valuable weapon. But in the wrong hands, it'd spell disaster. Talk of the devil, and the devil comes running, so suddenly Hacker is there to steal the weapon away. However, before he can, Ace hits Hacker, who is temporarily down. However, one of Terror's ground borgs takes the Energy Enhancer and runs away. Seems like a tough betrayal, doesn't it? Hacker is arrested and sent to trial. He, however, vouches that he'll never betray Terror's secrets and that Doc would come and rescue him. However, Terror, being who he is, wants to destroy Hacker lest he spill Terror's beans. He sends his cyborgs to destroy Hacker at court, but the Centurions manage to fend them off and safeguard Hacker long enough to give him a lifelong prison sentence to a top-secret location. Doc Terror, however, is still determined to take down Hacker and bids his time. The Centurions take Hacker to Alcatraz prison in outer space, a place that has been abandoned for over a decade. Hacker, for his part, tries to distort the journey, but he is locked away for good. However, the Centurions get new orders to go to the facility in disguise and free Hacker. Confused, the Centurions ask why, and the scientist who created the Energy Enhancer explains that if they do that, they can trick Terror into destroying the weapon, and once destroyed it can't be rebuilt. Thus, the Centurions go to Alcatraz and free Hacker, who then contacts Doc Terror. He sends his missile to finish Hacker off, but Jake and Max divert it long enough for Ace to destroy it. The episode ends with the danger of the Energy Enhancer averted, but unfortunately, Hacker got away again. How has Hacker ever trusted Doc Terror again? That's a different issue altogether.
I'm a little tied up at the moment, but it's nothing I can't.
Episode 34, Showdown at Skystalk. The Centurions are on a reality show this fine day. Ace is apparently addicted to watching it, even though he doesn't think the show portrays his character quite right. However, Ace McCloud and Crystal Kane are heading for a vacation together on one of the most exclusive places in the galaxy, Pleasure Star. Once they reach there, they are welcomed by the director of the Pleasure Star, Mr. Harshaw. He sends Ace and Crystal with an android to find their rooms and relax for a while before they can enjoy everything the star has to offer. Meanwhile, Dr. Wu is visiting Harshaw on some allegations of illegal activities. However, Harshaw sends his androids after him. Meanwhile, Ace is having one hell of a time shooting at holographic images and praises Harshaw's ingenuity. Valentina, Harshaw's daughter, however, says that even though her father is a genius, he is troubled, but Ace doesn't believe it at first. However, after an encounter with frantic Dr. Wu chased by androids into a pond, Crystal confirms that sometimes is not right there. They call Max on the Pleasure Star to dive into the waters and look for Dr. Wu. However, he is captured, and so are Crystal and Ace. Things are getting a little stuffy in here. When they come to their senses, Harshaw says he plans to make android clones with human memories, but only of important people like them. However, her daughter helps them escape and says they can use the escape pod to contact Skyvault. Meanwhile, after some time, Ace and Crystal get separated from Max and Valentina, who are successful in using the escape pod and connecting to Jake. Jake comes and helps Ace and Crystal, but they again get separated. Jake then goes after Harshaw, who surrenders with a parting gift. He'll blow the Pleasure Star into bits, and it won't let Earth go unscathed. However, Max says if they cut the Skystalk at the base, they avert the situation. Meanwhile, Ace and Crystal, with much effort, contacted the Sky Vault and asked to beam down Ace's weapon system. Later, with the dust settled, Crystal promised Valentina that her father would get the best medical care since his kind of genius would be a shame to let go of.
Kronos, how did you get here? One more step.
Episode 35, The Warrior. The Science Council members are discussing their new project. The Amazon basin has an abundance of resources, which makes it ideal. However, massive deforestation isn't their motive, but a controlled picking of important species of plants. Suddenly, they are attacked by a group of terrorists, and Jose Rivera, a South American representative on the council, has been taken hostage by a terrorist named Colonel Guerrero. They have asked for a ransom of $1 billion and a hoard of uncut diamonds and emeralds. All of this information is being relayed to the Centurions by Crystal Kane, who also informs them that the World Council is leaning towards giving in to the terrorists' plans. Crystal also says that it is Jake who will deliver the ransom. As Jake is being taken to the location of ransom drop-off by a boat, he has to give up his wristcom too, in addition to any other devices. He only takes Shadow with him. However, before departing, Ace gives him a tracking device in the form of bubblegum to avoid notice. Thus, Ace embarks on his journey while Max trails them underwater. However, Max is attacked by Doc Terra's water borg soon enough, and he loses sight of Jake, who has his problems to deal with, namely the man who was transporting him. The person was greedy and tried to trick Jake and steal the ransom suitcase. However, Jake successfully gets back on the boat, but unfortunately, the boat is hijacked by the terrorists under Guerrero. The terrorists take the ransom and Jake with them, while leaving Shadow and the greedy man on the boat. They take away even the gum that was given to Jake by Ace and throw him with Jose Rivera. The Colonel then tells Doc Terra about their mission's success and also says that he has captured a Centurion. Terra admonishes Guerrero, saying even an unarmed Centurion is dangerous. A sentiment that was more than true. Jake manages to escape while taking Jose with him. However, he is soon confronted by Guerrero, and as he tries to eliminate Jake, he says he has a last wish, to have a gum. As Guerrero passed the gum to Jake, he alerted Ace to his location, and soon enough, Crystal beamed Ace there. Jake then opens his suitcase to reveal there is his exoframe in there instead of the ransom. They fend off the cyborgs that were given to Colonel by Terra and corner the terrorist. However, within a span of distraction, Colonel Guerrero escapes. This episode aired at a time when terrorism was at its all-time high, and thus, the show tried to raise awareness on the topic with this fun take. Episode 36, Return of Cassandra. The episode begins with the Centurions trying out a test when they're attacked for real by Terra's strappers. They rush to suit up but soon realise that their beaming pod was jammed by Terra. As Ace is the only one who is suited up among them, he tries to fight the cyborgs, but soon he realises he is running low on ammunition. However, there is no way to beam more assault weapons. When the situation seems a little bleak, a woman wearing a white dress in Greek style comes and saves the Centurions. It is then revealed that the woman is named Cassandra Crow, a witch. The Centurions decide to invite her back with them for a celebration. However, Shadow keeps on growling at her, unbeknownst to all. Dogs, or rather animals, have more sensitivity in sensing trouble, it seems. Once back at the Centrum, Ace tries to sweet-talk Cassandra and shows her a rose she once gave her. Cassandra talks about her twin sister, Lilith, who is somewhat of a black sheep in their family. Soon, they cut the cake and enjoy it, but Shadow keeps on baring his teeth at Cassandra. Meanwhile, the Centurions are talking about how Skyvault has a program that can create psychic pattern clones and might also copy Cassandra's. With a glint in her eye, Cassandra agrees and they're beamed over to Skyvault. However, once Cassandra is hooked on the program, she uses her black witch power to take control of Skyvault. It is revealed that she is not Cassandra at all, but Lilith, her twin, and is working alongside Doc Terror, whom she helped get into the Skyvault as she held the others captive. She then boasts that as long as she, the real Cassandra, is at Massachusetts under her spell, the captive Centurions won't be freed. However, realizing the loophole Ace uses, Cassandra's white magic rose to combat Lilith's spell, and he beams himself to rescue the real Cassandra. Ace lands in Cassandra's town and finds everything a little weird. He heads over to Cross's mansion, where he finds traps at every step. However, Cassandra's white rose helps him overcome most of them, even with an intervention by Hacker. Ace then finds Cassandra tied up in a room with a spell. He uses the white rose and cuts her ties, freeing her. He is then confronted by Hacker, but with the help of clever Cassandra, he overwhelms Hacker and even tricks Doc Terror into beaming the duo back on Skyvault. Cassandra used her magic to disguise Ace as Hacker and free the other two Centurions and Crystal. Together, using their wits and power, they overwhelm Doc Terror and Lilith.
Won't be needing this.
Episode 37, Night on Terror Mountain. Terror is seen attacking a key navigational air traffic control station that controls the traffic of airplanes, located in the Transylvanian Alps. However, the Centurions successfully there attacked and chased Terror's Dominion. Ace crashed it, but Doc Terror and Hacker easily ejected themselves before the crash saved themselves. The trio decides to follow Terror's and Hacker's footprints. However, the weather is so bad they have to take up residence in one of the houses within a Transylvanian village. There, Ace is being teased by Max and Jake about how many old horror movies he has watched to make his imagination run wild about vampires. Meanwhile, Terror and Hacker find an elusive castle on a hill just beyond the village's cemetery. Within the castle, they find crude but a more or less working lab. As Terror tries to invent something new, Hacker takes the time to explore the castle. He comes across the coffin of Count Dracula, and Terror frees Dracula from his suspended sleep. Terror then tries to enlist Dracula in his plans for world domination, however, warns him that if they do not eliminate the Centurions, their plans will never see the light of day, a little pun on vampiric myth. Count Dracula thus sets off to find the Centurions. He tracks them to the house they're staying and takes Max under his mind control and takes him back to his castle. Meanwhile, Doc Terror has created cyborg bats, but they're truly in control of Dracula than anyone else. Miraculously, Dracula even managed to bring Terror under his control. However, when Jake and Ace arrive at his castle, they easily break Max's thrall and overwhelm the Count. Dracula, seeing his imminent defeat, escapes, while Hacker wakes Terror up from Dracula's influence. Ace, however, is not keen to let Dracula escape, and thus chases him towards the sunlight while Dracula's castle crumbles. Just like in the movies, the episode ends with the trip enjoying a drink and discussing how they'll take monsters as opposed to mythical beings. Episode 38, Merlin. Crystal meets her college professor along with Jake and Ace. They are watching a game of fencing when the professor tells Crystal about a hidden location, the final resting place of Merlin, the famous magician. Suddenly, the fencing players go haywire and start shooting at Crystal's group. However, Ace jumps into action while Crystal takes the professor and his assistant to hide. Ace and Jake manage to fend the fencing robots off easily. Meanwhile, as Crystal and the professor are coming out of their hiding place, his assistant kidnaps him and takes off. In truth, she was working for Doc Terror. Within the Dominion, Terror orders the professor to lead him to Merlin's tomb. Doc Terror's current plan is to use Merlin's powers to conquer Earth. However, even though the professor vehemently refuses, he is hardly given any choice. Meanwhile, his assistant hands Terror something, Merlin Mirror, which will help them easily locate Merlin's tomb. However, the glint in the assistant's eyes hints that she is planning something else entirely. Meanwhile, Crystal has a vague idea of where the tomb of Merlin could be, and that shall be the direction Doc Terror is heading. So, Crystal asks Ace and Jake to search for them, while she, on the other hand, would go to a London library to know more about the situation. However, once she flagged down the book, her professor must have found she was attacked by a robot. Fortunately, she was saved by Max, and together they beam back to Skyvault. There, they learn what Crystal found in the book and head out to find the lost tomb. Doc Terror and his party found the location first, and using the Merlin mirror, they finally unearthed the resting place of Merlin. Unbeknownst to them, the Centurions are there watching. When Merlin wakes up, Terror orders him to do his bidding, which he refuses. Terror, not feeling generous after being rejected, laser guns Merlin. At that moment, the Centurions reveal themselves and are attacked by Terror's cyborgs. In the aftermath of their scuffle, Terror ran away with the crown that was resting within Merlin's tomb. However, Merlin knows where the Terror is headed next and urges the Centurions to follow him. When Doc Terror and the others arrive at a lake, the assistant calls for the famous sword of King Arthur, Excalibur. However, before Doc Terror can have it, the girl takes it, saying she is the rightful owner. Even when the Centurions and Merlin arrive, she says they'll all be her knights. However, Ace tricks her and gets her away from the sword while Doc Terror uses the opportunity to attack the Centurions. With a little help from Merlin, the Centurions defeat Terror and take back the crown. The episode ends with Merlin returning to his resting place and the area that was destroyed when Doc Terror attacked restored. The Merlin mirror is also taken back to space so that the legendary Merlin can slumber in peace. Episode 39, The Monsters from Below. The episode begins with Doc Terror ordering a scientist, Dr. Nathan Remulus, to make more humanoids to mimic UN members and Crystal during their upcoming meeting. However, Nathan refuses because he doesn't want to harm anyone, but Doc Terror is relentless. Afterward, Nathan gets in touch with Crystal when she is talking with the Centurions, and they all see Nathan and his assistant getting attacked by some monster-like things. Doc Terror arrives at the lab, but that's when they see what those monsters can do. They can suck in a person's appearance, leaving them dry corpse-like. The first victim is Nathan's assistant, but when these monsters try to do the same to Terror, it appears that they're ineffective on cyborgs. Meanwhile, the Centurions also arrive at the situation and face Doc Terror's cyborgs. However, by the time they get in to save Dr. Remulus, it is too late. Furthermore, Terror planted a bomb which exploded as soon as Jake entered, forcing the Centurions to leave Terror and focus on saving their friend. However, once out, they split up to look for Terror. Jake goes alone. In the city, a woman is pulled into a manhole and it is revealed to be the handiwork of Hacker and those monster-like things. They try to impersonate her. However, Jake arrives and manages to defeat the few monster-like things, but unfortunately loses the girl and Hacker. He, however, was able to find her name among her belongings and soon relayed the information to the others. They found out that the girl worked at UN security, meaning Terror was planning to target them somehow. The scene shifts and Nathan is forced to make more humanoids. One such humanoid mimics the abducted girl, and the next day when she goes to work, she attacks her co-worker and holds the members of the meeting captive, but with one exception. Crystal isn't there yet. However, when she arrives, a guard tells her about how a girl named Diana attacked him, and Crystal takes a laser gun with her. She tries to stop Hacker, but she is captured and taken to an underground lab. There, she sees how the humanoids easily take the shape of other humans, and when it is her turn, Nathan tells her to avoid the eyes. Crystal escapes along with Nathan. The first thing she does is contact the Centurions and let them know. Soon though, Hacker gets to her and Dr. Remulus, and they're put in a cage. However, the Centurions come on in her rescue, Max going to save her, while the other two Centurions fend off Terror's cyborgs. The episode ends with Ethan finding a cure for his assistant and all the humanoids being disintegrated. However, Jake pulls a joke by dressing up like one. Episode 40, The Road Devils. Our beloved Jake Rockwell is in Australia to test out a new vehicle, Sandcar. While he was out there, he saw a group of bikers chasing a band of gypsies through the desert. He can't seem to catch a break, it seems. Anyhow, he decided that those guys needed some help and asked Crystal to beam down his exosuit. Meanwhile, the bikers were giving the gypsies one hell of a time. However, they suddenly realize that a Centurion is after them. They try to shake him off their trail, but to no avail. This makes the leader of the gang Road Devils very frustrated. He decided to leave the Centurion and give the gypsies a parting gift. They hit the van of the head gypsy, and while two of them dove out, a third passenger, a girl, was still trying to turn the car around before it crashed. Jake arrived at an opportune moment and prevented the car from being crashed. As Jake brings the girl back to her group, her father thanks him for saving the gypsies. However, one member, Mitch, is less than thrilled when Shadow accidentally gets its lucky charm. Mitch even snaps at Shadow. He asks the Centurion to leave already, but Jake says he'll stick around just for a while to make sure nothing happens again. Later, as the scene shifts, it is revealed that the Road Devils gang is in cahoots with Doc Terror, who is in search of a microcircuit, and the gang has to get it for him. That night, when everyone is asleep, the Road Devils strike again. They abduct the daughter in hopes that Mitch will come and save her. Jake tried to stop them, but was hit with a laser that induced a sleeping effect. Shadow then nudges him awake, and he chases after the gang. When Jake almost overwhelms the gang, the leader requests help from Doc Terror, who sends in his cyborgs. However, Jake gets a little help from Mitch and manages to shake the cyborgs off. Mitch then reveals that he had been low on money once and had been working with the Road Devils when he stole a microcircuit for them. They then set off to free the girl from the Road Devils. Once they arrive at Road Devil's stronghold, Jake asks for assistance from Max and Ace. They devise a plan in which Mitch and Jake will go inside while Ace and Max will stay out and look for any other troubles. Thankfully, Jake and Mitch were able to free the girl while Max and Ace fended off the cyborgs sent by Doc Terror. However, as the scene settles, Jake resumes his driving adventure at full speed in his new experimental sandcar. The man sure loves cars.
This doesn't look good on you.
Episode 41, Zone Dancer. A mysterious woman steps into a detective's office, her movements graceful yet tense. She introduces herself as Crystal Kane and explains she's been accused of zone dancing. Intrigued, the detective Gabe probes further, curious about it despite himself. Meanwhile, in the Sky Vault, Crystal is multitasking. She guides Ace, who is speeding down a highway in pursuit of a luxury car. As Ace marvels at the vehicle, Crystal remarks that the owner likely dabbles in shady dealings, which would explain the wealth. The chase turns violent as the driver tries to shake Ace off with aggressive maneuvers, but with Crystal sending backup, they finally corner the culprit. They're ready to head back for a well-deserved break when another emergency call comes in. Back at the office, Gabe contemplates Crystal Kane's case. Zone dancing, illegally hacking into powerful corporate systems, was dangerous, but the headgear used to do it had become trendy and hard to distinguish from harmless tech. Gabe heads to a lab to meet his tech-savvy contact, Gibson, who informs him that a zone dancer known as Neon is planning to infiltrate Sky Vault's systems. At Sky Vault, the Centurions receive alarming news. Megacorps, the company behind their beaming technology, has been hacked by a zone dancer. Ace and John Thunder are dispatched to investigate, but when they arrive, they find the hacker is none other than Crystal herself, or so it seems. After a showdown, Crystal escapes. However, when Ace contacts Crystal at the Sky Vault, she immediately responds, leading to their discovery that the hacker is actually a clone, created using stolen beaming technology. Shaken, they return to Sky Vault, realizing the situation is more dangerous than they thought. Despite warnings to stay away, Gabe feels compelled to help Crystal. He teams up with Gibson and enters the Zone, a virtual world as real as our world of thoughts can be. Together, they track down Neon, the real mastermind. Meanwhile, the Centurions trace the clone Crystal to a restaurant, but she escapes again. Neon's grip tightens as he takes control of Sky Vault's systems, threatening their satellite. Gabe contacts Ace with critical intel about Neon, leading them back to Megacorps. In a climactic moment, Gabe confronts the clone Crystal, urging her to break free from Neon's control. After a tense struggle, she overcomes the programming and destroys the building, allowing them to escape with the help of Jake. A heartfelt ending wraps up this episode with Crystal, the clone, and Gabe Knight walking into the sunset. Episode 42, Firecracker. A base is under attack. Our dashing Centurion Ace McLeod is having a romantic dinner with Crystal Kane when his wristcom's alarm wakes him up. It is none other than Crystal Kane calling Ace for an emergency meeting in 2 minutes. When the Centurions gather around, Crystal informs them that a region named Quisto has been attacked by forces of Montenegro. The latter has refused to acknowledge any misdoings on their part, though the former is not convinced and declared a state of imminent war. The crook of the problem is that both nations are equivalent in having powerful allies, and a conflict between the two of them would be an all-out world war. The Centurions are obviously responsible for preventing that. Thus, Rex and John are headed to Montenegro, while the OG trio is headed to Quisto. When Rex and John arrive at Montenegro, The prince shows them how an attack from their side is impossible. He brings the two Centurions to a war room where everything is computerized through Def 3000. Dr. Rita Chang is responsible for overseeing everything, and she shows them that without explicit inside orders, a surprise attack is impossible. They also learn about some abandoned stations, which prompts John Thunder to look into it, while Rex confirms all that he has learned with Crystal. The OG trio is trying to convince the president of Quisto to see reason. As John Thunder investigates one of the abandoned bases, he is captured by Mai Mei, who works for someone named Lady Fang. Rex is also ambushed by Dr. Rita. When both the Centurions come back to consciousness, they realize that Rita is Lady Fang, and she is the one who wants to start a war. The duo is again thrown into separate prison cells. John manages to escape and break Rex too. Lady Fang wants to start a war so that she can supply ammunition to both sides and make a hefty profit. As there is a lack of contact with the other two Centurions, Jake and Ace go to their aid, but they're attacked on the grounds of trespassing on unauthorized property. Seeing this, the military general of Quisto decides to launch an attack while DEF 3000 also prepares for an attack. The scene shifts, and we come across John and Rex tricking Mai Mei to take them where their suits are kept, and then to a control room where they can contact Crystal in the Sky Vault. As the battle rages outside, the Centurions try their best to avoid nuclear damage, especially Ace, who takes down 2 nuclear missiles. John and Rex barge in on Lady Fang, intending to arrest her, but she escapes. The disaster was averted, and the episode ended on a prosperous note where the two nations jointly thanked the Centurions for their effort.
Missile, fire!
Episode 43, Traitors 3. A sudden attack is being carried on Mesa Verde, a bustling space station. Residents scramble for safety, realizing that their only hope lies with the Centurions. Ace, Jake, and Max quickly respond, recognizing that Doc Terra is behind the assault. The trio takes control of the situation, not one to be easily outmaneuvered, fires a well-placed shot that shatters the nearby dam. As water rushes toward a school perched on a hill, the Centurions barely manage to divert the torrent in time. The flood instead devastates the space station and the surrounding city, causing widespread destruction. The scene shifts to the aftermath, where Mr. Lomax, the head of the World Council of Scientists, accuses the Centurions of causing millions in property damage. Despite Max pointing out that they at least saved the school, they're shown images of the destroyed terrain, proving otherwise. Lomax suspends the trio from their duties, barring them from the Sky Vault until they can clear their names. Suspecting a setup, Max secretly grabs some equipment before their eviction. Determined to uncover the truth, the team investigates the ruins of the school and finds evidence suggesting they've been framed. Meanwhile, Doc Terra has planted a bomb in the Sky Vault, intending to destroy it. Back at the operations center, the Centurions try to figure out who might be behind the scheme. Max suspects someone on the investigation committee is involved with Terra, and after digging into the committee's financials, they discover Louis Stein deep in debt. Jake sends his pet, Shadow, to tail Stein while the team investigates other leads, eventually suspecting something might have been left in the Sky Vault. When they return to the Sky Vault, the investigation committee catches them in the act, but the Centurions explain they're only there to search for evidence. A tense search reveals the bomb. Just as Max finds it, Senator Kembu confesses that Doc Terra forced her into the scheme by kidnapping her grandson, Jeremy. With the bomb about to go off and their systems wiped, Max instructs Crystal to switch to manual backup. As Doc Terra launches another attack, thinking he's finally won, the Centurions fight back with restored systems and overwhelm him. The episode closes with a happy reunion between Senator Kembu and Jeremy, though Kembu resigns, unwilling to let her family become vulnerable again. The Centurions are cleared of all charges, and Stein admits his debt is due to adopting too many pets. Peace, at least for now, is restored. Although primarily an action-based series, this episode is one of the few that offers a more emotional tone. Episode 44, You Only Love Twice. Let me ask you a question first. What would you do if you saw someone you thought was gone again? Well, this is the perfect episode to ponder on that. It begins with a certain General Harding trying to get past the security check. The security personnel says they thought he died. The guy showed the ID proving he is very much alive. The scene shifts and we see Doc Terra showing Hacker about Colonel Chuck, who once was Crystal Kane's fiancé. However, he disappeared in a shuttle crash 5 years ago. Terra is going to create a lifelike hologram of Chuck who could speak and think too. He plans to use it to fool Crystal Kane. Meanwhile, all 3 Centurions are called for missions at 3 different places, with Ace being in outer space, Max at C-Lab, and Jake at the icy edges of the world. Doc Terra orchestrated the whole thing to make sure when he set the trap for her, she'd personally look into it. Thus, seeing Chuck's shuttle, Crystal beams down there to check it. However, Doc Terra used holographic images to trick her. At that moment, Chuck arrives and saves her. Crystal is shocked to see him, but as they're being pursued by traumatizers, she files the questions away. Lucy, though, felt something off about Chuck, as animals always somehow seem to sense such abnormalities. On the other hand, the trio realizes that the missions were hoaxes when the attackers simply disappeared. Moreover, Crystal is missing too, and soon they figure out why. They beam down to the location and started searching for Crystal. Meanwhile, Doc Terra has come to pick up Chuck and Crystal. However, when Doc tells them about how he wants to convert Crystal into a cyborg, the holographic Chuck seems to object to it. Somehow, his feelings are real. He also learns that he is a hologram and quickly makes a hologram of Crystal to trick Terra. Chuck takes Crystal out, gives him his communication watch, and uses the last of his essence to activate it and help her send a beacon. The Centurions catch it and dive in to save her. After the ordeal is over, Max explains how Terra never counts on Chuck's feelings for Crystal, who is happy that she chose the right man twice. Episode 45, Sungrazer. The episode premieres with Doc Terra's henchman stealing a deadly virus. Just as he attempts to escape, the Centurions intervene and stop him. However, the villain ominously warns them that their victory is hollow. This warning becomes clear when the scene shifts to the virus vial, now cracked open during the chaos. The deadly pathogen begins spreading rapidly. As the Centurions enjoy a rare day of relaxation, they receive an urgent alert. The virus is spreading across the Western nations at an alarming rate, and the World Council is in panic mode. The only person who might have a solution is Professor Manfred Howard, the scientist who originally developed the virus. However, there's a problem. Howard hasn't been seen on Earth for 20 years. He and a group of fellow scientists had left to board a man-made comet called Sungrazer, which now orbits dangerously close to the Sun. Nothing can clearly scream sci-fi more than this. Determined, the Centurions and Crystal board the space shuttle Starfire and set off in search of Sungrazer. After navigating the treacherous conditions of deep space, they finally locate the comet. However, the intense heat from the sun grows with each passing moment, forcing them to act quickly. Beamed down onto the Sungrazer by Crystal, the Centurions find the scientists, but they're met with hostility. The scientists, led by Damon Zemo, want nothing to do with Earth's problems. Zemo, particularly bitter, believes that humanity's violent nature drove them to seek refuge in space. Despite the cold reception, Professor Howard agrees to help, revealing that he possesses the formula for an antidote. However, Zemo vehemently opposes the idea, believing Earth is beyond saving. As tensions rise, a warning blares through the Sungrazer. They're on a collision course with the Sun. The Centurions offer help even if they do not get the antidote. However, Zemo refutes their help. Amidst this, Ace manages to convince Elena, Zemo's daughter, that they must work together to survive. With time running out, Elena persuades the other scientists to accept the Centurions' help. However, Zemo, under hubris and prideful attitude, tries to sabotage their efforts. This was obviously a little petulant of him, since if the comet had not turned away from the sun, he would have died too. Nevertheless, together they correct the ship's course just in time, narrowly avoiding disaster. It is interesting to note that the Centurions, though individually specialized, often had to work together. This focus on teamwork was a common theme in 80s cartoons, but was particularly pronounced in the Centurions, where the heroes' abilities complemented each other perfectly. In the end, Professor Howard agrees to return to Earth to help develop the antidote. Meanwhile, Elena and the others choose to remain aboard the Sungrazer, continuing their life in space since Zemo's vision, despite the man's bitterness, is still viable to them.
We will see who has the better weapons now that
Episode 46, Novice. Ace and Jake trying out their new assault weapon system. As the man who designs the weapons, Klaus is also present. However, the moment of leisure is gone when Crystal tells them to check out a remote village near Mount Andes in Peru, from where she's receiving strapper signals. The trio, along with Klaus, head over to the village where they find giant cyborg tarantulas attacking the villagers. They quickly change into their exoframes, though Jake prefers his new frame this time. The Centurions fend off the tarantulas, though Jake faces a problem. His suit is not working. As two tarantulas corner him, he is saved just in time by Max and Ace. Later, they inform Klaus that his new creation is not working and asks him to check it again. Meanwhile, the villagers, in honor of their valiant efforts, decide to throw the Centurions a fiesta, which means a party. That night, near the river, Klaus is checking his creation. He finds that everything is in the correct order and cannot understand why it did not work before. It is then that he notices Doc Terror's ship heading towards the dam. As a novice and perfectionist rolled into one, Klaus decides to check on what Terror is up to make up for his naive failure with the assault system. However, Jake does notice the absence of Klaus and decides to check if he is okay. When he gets there, he finds that Klaus is missing and seems like he left in a hurry. Thus, Jake decides to go after him. Prudent, don't you think? I'd say impulsive. Doc Terror has planted a bomb at the dam to flood the remote village. Meanwhile, Klaus manages to sneak into Doc Terror's dominion and is spotted by Hacker. He takes Klaus to Terror, where Terror puts a collar on him once Klaus naively reveals that he is the person who designed Centurions' weapons. Klaus is then forced to make weapons for Terror too. The scene shifts, and we see Jake in front of the dam, and he realizes something is truly amiss. He then calls for backup from Ace and Max. The three Centurions arrive, however, with a bomb detonating. They're forced to prioritize saving the village first, as Jake and Ace try to solve the problem by creating an avalanche of rocks. Max heads underwater, where he finds a sunken temple and creates a water pressure so that the flood is sucked in. However, he also happens to find a jacket belonging to Klaus. They think that Klaus is dead. Meanwhile, Klaus, who is very much not dead, is forced to make weapons for Terror, though he sabotages it a little, hoping it would give the Centurions the edge they need. Later, while the Centurions are checking Klaus's supposed last creation, Crystal tells them that she has located Terror and beams the Centurions there. Once they arrive, the cyborgs attack them while Klaus is stuck on a drilling machine with Hacker that is going deeper and deeper underground when it hits a water level. As Ace and Max fend off the cyborgs who are advanced now due to Klaus's handiwork, they're also set to beam to another location by him. This allows Jake to go after the drilling machine and save Klaus. The episode ends on a somber note, where naive Klaus says he'll stick to creating weapons and live the fighting to the Centurions.
Tuition with my freeze ray cannons.
Episode 47, Breakout. A meteor is headed straight for an outer space prison station. Meanwhile, a prisoner takes the opportunity to escape. He is then levitated by Doc Terror into his dominion. The escaped prisoner is Dr. Harriman, who was once a distinguished scientist. However, over the course, he became greedy and started using substandard material in his constructions. That had cost many lives and ended up a reason for his conviction. Ever since, Dr. Harriman had a grudge against the Science Council. The Centurions are being briefed about it, while Rex and John are working undercover at one of the Harriman's holdings under his daughter, Alexis. Meanwhile, the Science Council had launched a new project, a dam powered by computers. Meanwhile, as Rex and John are working at Harriman's, they have a nice little chat with Alexis, who shares her displeasure with the Science Council. However, the facility is soon attacked by Doc Terror, presumably to steal the Sonic Ray, a new invention. As Rex and Jake try their best to stop him, Terror manages to evade them and escape with the Sonic Ray. Later, the Centurions as well as Crystal puzzle over Dick Terror's true intentions. They also conclude that someone on the inside must have helped Terror during the attack for him to come out successful. The scene shifts, and we see Rex following Alexis. He has assumed it was her who helped Terror, and as it turns out, he was correct. Alexis meets with his father after a long time, and things get emotional. However, Terror is there, and he orders Harriman to get on with niceties and hop on with Phase 3 of their plan. Alexis, though, urges him not to throw in their lot with Doc Terror. Meanwhile, Rex's cover is blown up, and he tries to stop Terror, but he escapes, taking Alexis and Harriman with him. However, it is still not clear what it is that Terror is planning. Later, Alexis tries to sneak a CD that supposedly contains the plan of Terror. Apparently, Doc Terror is planning to use the sonic ray to break the dam and let the ocean flood the nearby area. However, before she can leave, John Thunder intercepts her, though Hacker comes along too and takes Thunder with them. He is forced to watch the destruction unfold, while Harriman and Alexis seem to have double thoughts. John tells Harriman that innocent lives would be lost. Terror then takes Harriman to operate on the sonic radar. Meanwhile, John Thunder urges Alexis to listen to him instead of trusting Terror, who hadn't warned the innocent civilians. The CD was swiped, you see. Alexis, for her part though, comes to reason and frees John and races up to stop her father. However, the sonic ray had already been used and the dam was partially collapsing. The Centurions come to the rescue and John Thunder successfully destroys the sonic ray with his sonic knife. Seeing that he'd been defeated, Terror and Hacker quickly slipped away. The episode ends with Harriman lamenting his misjudgment and wishing he could do something to make up for his mishaps. Max says he can start by donating their facility's profits to humanitarian causes.
I've had about enough of this.
Episode 48, Atlantis Adventure, Part 1. Members from the Sea Lab, Maylee and Jason are in a submarine named Sea Bubble. They are scouting a recently discovered trench. They realize that the trench is far more deep than they had initially anticipated. Suddenly, giant tentacles pull their submarine and they lose contact with the Sea Lab. The Centurions are called up to solve the mystery. They show the Centurions the last place the Sea Bubble was before it lost contact. They ask Max, who is an underwater specialist, to look into it. However, Crystal warns him that even his depth charger might sustain the pressure of that level of underwater currents. Max says that is one gamble he has to take and sets off. As Max goes in search of the Sea Bubble, he realizes the depth is much more than the sonar radar detected. He finally comes across the Sea Bubble, only to find it totally wrecked and the two passengers are nowhere to be found. While Max mulls over the scenario, he notices circular marks on the body of Sea Bubble and concludes that he has seen them before. Just then, a giant sea squid comes out of nowhere and starts pulling Max deeper. Max, using his exoframe, manages to escape only to be ambushed by the squid again. However, this time while escaping its clutches, he inadvertently caused an underwater earthquake. Meanwhile, at the Sea Lab, they've lost contact with Max too. Anxious, Jake and Ace try on their own to find Max. They return to Skyvault, and the remaining two Centurions discuss what can be done with Crystal. They came up with a plan of using Venus Pro, something that was made to withstand the high pressure of space atmosphere. The duo heads over to NASA to borrow it and comes across Sean, a guy who went to the academy with Ace. As Ace and Sean bicker, Jake tells them to focus more on Max for now. Meanwhile, after the sudden underwater earthquake, Max had lost consciousness, and when he came to his senses, he saw a woman astride a seahorse. Not understanding what is going on, he promptly loses consciousness again. The scene shifts, and we see Ace, Sean, and Jake aboard Venus Pro and scouting through the trench. They also come across the wrecked Sea Bubble and even Max's exoframe. Meanwhile, in an underwater city, Max comes into consciousness as a woman watches over him. He, confused, asks who she is, and she replies she's Diana, a doctor, among many other things. Max then inquires about where they are, and to that she informs him that he is in Atlantis. Unable to believe it, Diana gives Max a detailed tour. She says that they once used to live on land, but an earthquake sank them. Their ancestors survived in a deep cave and built this place. They have no desire to contact the upper world since they live a peaceful life in Atlantis. However, due to some internal disputes like Prince Naro and his followers, they keep police patrolling the streets. Max says his friends would find him, but Diana is confident they can keep them out. Naro overhears this conversation and decides that if he can intercept them, it will give him the perfect opportunity to rule Atlantis. Max is then taken to another building, and there he discovers that Jason and Maylee are alive. He also understands that the giant squid was Atlantis' attempt to keep people venturing into their trench. Diana then locks Max with Jason and Maylee and leaves. Meanwhile, Ace, Jake, and Sean are attacked by Naro and his followers. While Ace shoots down the pursers, he is also ambushed by the giant squid. Episode 49, Atlantis Adventure, Part 2. The high stakes form the last episode is still keeping the adrenaline high. Jake asks Crystal to help Ace before he loses contact with the Sky Vault. Ace is then beamed up from the clutches of the squid by Crystal, who says she can't contact Jake anymore. Ace then asks Crystal to beam him back to C-Lab so that he can find the other two Centurions. Meanwhile, Jake and Sean are captured by Naro's men. There, Sean seemingly switches sides and Jake ends up being captured alone. Meanwhile, Max escapes his prison, with Maylee and Jason in too. They find a control room and try to connect to the Sky Vault, but are again intercepted by Princess Diana. She takes them back to somewhere it won't be an easy escape from. Meanwhile, the C-Lab was taken over by Naro's forces. Max, on the other hand, devises a clever plan. He asks Maylee to start a fight with Jason as a way to distract them. Then he easily overwhelmed Princess Diana and demanded that she show them the route back home. Meanwhile, Jake is being shoved into a swarm of carnivorous fishes by Naro's henchmen when he overpowers them. He then makes contact with Crystal and asks her to send Max's depth charger. Meanwhile, Ace finds out about how Sean has changed sides and is disappointed in him. Naro orders to eliminate Ace and Sean asks for permission to do it personally. However, Sean was acting, trying to give the impression that he changed sides. So when he got the chance, he overpowered Naro's men and tossed Ace a laser gun and a wristcom. Meanwhile, Max and his party, including Diana, are on a submarine and trying to get out when they're attacked by Naro's supporters. Seeing the odds, Diana agrees to a truce and Max can contact Crystal, who then beams down his exoframe. Meanwhile, Ace and Sean disable the C-Lab's pressure force field and Crystal beams down Ace's exoframe. They manage to fend off Naro's forces. With a little help from Diana Giant Squid, they capture Naro, and the episode ends with Diana agreeing to open contact with the upper world one step at a time. Meanwhile, the Centurions promises to keep the existence of Atlantis' coordinates a secret. Episode 50, Ghost Warrior. A group of 3 teenagers are driving through the desert, returning from a basketball game. They're excitedly discussing the game when they're attacked by a ray of arrow. The arrow came from a giant ghost warrior who urged the boys to fight for the land that was stolen from them by white people. He warns the boys that if they do not do what they've been asked to, the ghost warrior will destroy them. The scene shifts, and we see John Thunder along with Jake and Ace. They're headed with John to his tribe. However, when he arrives, he is greeted with the news of the supposed ghost warrior. Many people from his tribe have seen this warrior, who is almost 20 feet tall. Meanwhile, as John is in the meeting, Ace and Jake are talking and walking through the desert when they see a glow. They head towards it like a moth to a flame and realize it is Doc Terror's spacecraft. However, when they try to reach it, they're greeted by Hacker and a horde of cyborgs who attack them. Jake and Ace fend off the attackers and head over to the reservation. Meanwhile, as John promises to look into the matter of the Ghost Warrior, the warrior himself arrives. He asks the people of Tuwaka to fight for their land and attack the Geological Research Center the next day. Later, John and Shadow go to investigate the matter by following the Ghost Warrior, whose footprints mysteriously disappeared. However, John figured that they were near the spaceport and that Doc Terror was planning to attack it. Suddenly, a bolt of ray hits the rock bed where John and Shadow are standing, sending them into an avalanche. That's when the Ghost Warrior arrives again, who is revealed to be Doc Terror within a huge traumatizer. He is using a hologram of an Indian warrior to trick John's tribe while he attacks Spaceport. Doc Terror then leaves John to his fate, but somehow he manages to escape. The next morning, Terror, disguised as the Ghost Warrior, instigates the tribe to attack the Geological Research Center as a decoy while he attacks the spaceport. Ace and Jake go to stop the chaos at the Geological Research Center when Crystal informs them about another attack at the spaceport. They soon realize what is underfoot and change courses. Meanwhile, John has figured out how to break free his tribe from Terror's trance. At the spaceport, the 2 Centurions fight tooth and nail to stop Terror. However, they're overwhelmed by his laser attacks. However, it is at that moment that John Thunder arrives with his tribe and foils Terror's plans. Episode 51, Let the Lightning Fall. This episode begins on a plane that has been hijacked by Doc Terror's henchmen. However, Ace McCloud is there to the rescue and successfully saves the passengers before the situation escalates. Meanwhile, Doc Terror is disappointed about the fact that the hijackers gave up so easily. He blames humans for being too unpredictable and says his mission failed because of that. His daughter, Amber, says that he can't dictate everything a human might do. To that, Doc Terror's solution is the extermination of all human beings. Back at the Sky Vault, Crystal received distress signals and alerted Rex Charger, who is in the area. Rex finds the aircraft that is being pursued by Doc Terror's Strapers along with Hacker. He fends off the pursuers and saves the aircraft. However, when he goes near the aircraft, he discovers that he saved the life of Amber, Doc Terror's daughter. He then takes Amber to Sky Vault, who tells them that she thinks her father has crossed the line and she wants to throw in her lot with the Centurions to stop him. Naturally, the Centurions are wary and skeptical of Amber's cause. After all, she is Terror's daughter. To prove that she is serious, she tells them about how her father had recently acquired a Florida power station and now intends to acquire an experimental weather station in the Caribbean. The Centurions are still not sure, and in a moment she overwhelms a guard, takes his gun, and shoots just between them to show that if she intended, she'd have hurt them. But she is not, because she wants to stop her father. Crystal is the first to finally trust Amber's words, and the others soon join in. Amber then tells them to split up. One group should go to the Caribbean and the other to Florida. Crystal beams them down. Jake, Amber, and Rex are in the Florida power station, while Ace and Max are at the weather station in the Caribbean. Amber leads them into the power station and they sneak up on Hacker. There they learn the real plan. Using the weather satellites and the power station, they intend to create the biggest storm known to mankind since Noah, a storm that is capable of drowning the entire human species. Meanwhile, Ace and Max fight off Terror's creations. However, they find no sign of the evil scientist himself. Back at the power station, Hacker captures Jake and Rex, but Amber is nowhere to be seen. They believe that Amber sold them out. However, Amber did not trap them, and soon she returned to help Rex and Jake. She contacted Crystal and asked her to send their exoframes to the coordinates she would give her. Together, they defeat Hacker. Meanwhile, the storm that Terror has orchestrated is growing worse. They are beamed where Jake helps Ace and Max, who are trapped by Terror, while Rex bravely goes and stops the storm. In the end though, blood is thicker than water, which means Amber helped her father escape back to Dominion.
Go to sleep, beast!
Episode 52, Cyborg Centurion. Ace is being chased by a horde of Doc Terror's creations. How tiresome. He manages to shoot them down, but unfortunately also inadvertently hurts himself. Ace is then taken to a hospital for an emergency surgery. Meanwhile, Doc Terror plans on destroying Viva Vargas for refusing to work with him. As Ace's operation is underway, Jake, Max and Crystal visit the hospital he's in. There, they meet the doctor operating on Ace, who shows them that Ace is now part cyborg, part human. When Ace wakes up and sees himself like that, he flows into a rage. He thinks he's going to be handicapped for life and cannot ever be a Centurion again. Ace's anger and frustration become evident, and Max decides to give him some alone time. Meanwhile, convalescing in hospital, Ace struggles to adjust to his new life of half cyborg and half-human existence. One such day, while he was strolling through the hospital grounds, he came across a woman in a wheelchair who introduced herself as Tracy. She said she had seen him watch her from a distance and wanted to know if he wanted to say something. To that, Ace replies he doesn't know, and she says when he does know what he wants to say, he knows where to find her. Later, Ace escapes from his hospital and goes into the cyborg underground. There, he fights in a fighting ring and nicknames himself as Poss. Soon, he catches the eye of a known underground fighter, Sukuma, who challenges Poss to a fight. Poss, aka Ace, accepts the invitation and defeats Sukuma in the fight. This got him the attention of Viva Vargas. After the fight, Viva Vargas approaches Poss and gives him the offer to go away with her to Alaska. Poss readily agrees. Meanwhile, Doc Terror attacks all of Vargas's holdings, destroying them. However, Vargas, though, is in Alaska with Poss and her group. There, they hunt a mutant polar bear, and Viva is taken in by Poss's bravery. This, though, isn't very acceptable to one of Viva's men who has feelings for her. He is lamenting in a pub when a guy named Weasel comes and offers to help. They lead Doc Terror to Xanadu, where Poss and Vargas are. When Terra starts to attack though, Ace shrugs off the cyborg half and says the gimmick was necessary to infiltrate, as Vargas wouldn't have ever let a Centurion to Xanadu. Ace then contacts Crystal, who beams down his exoframe along with the other two Centurions. Together, the three of them fight off Doc Terra and his forces. Later, Ace McCloud goes on a date with Tracy from the hospital. Episode 53, Day of the Animals. Doc Terra is again attempting to make more cyborgs. This time though, he sought to make cyborgs using animals. A dog is strapped to a cyborg making machine. However, there is a certain malfunction which happens during the process. Terra orders Hacker to close the doors before the dog escapes. He does just that, however. The dog easily breaks through the doors and runs away. Terra realizes that due to the sudden malfunction, the dog has acquired the strength of a cyborg, but remains a normal animal. As usual, he sees potential in turning it into a brand new weapon and orders Hacker to find the dog. The scene shifts to Jake Rockwell, who gets a call from Crystal. She asks him if he's having fun on his vacation, and Jake replies, desert survival training isn't his idea of fun. The scene shifts again, and we see Hacker chasing the dog, who is supremely powerful and easily manages to overwhelm Hacker. The scene then takes us to a self-defense class, being led by Crystal, who in a demonstration easily backflips Ace. Meanwhile, Doc Terra proudly shows Hacker his innovation, which enables him to control the mind of any animal using a remote control. It also gives them cyborg-like powers. Out in the desert, Jake is practicing his reflexes through survival training, while the other two Centurions are handling situations elsewhere. Meanwhile, Doc Terra hatches the plan of using his remote control to use Lucy the gorilla, Crystal's pet on Skyvault, to disable the force field around Skyvault. Terra plans to use it as an easy way to control all the animals on the planet Earth at once. Lucy, who is under the influence of Doc Terra's remote control, disables Skyvault's force field, which makes it easy for Terra and his henchman Hacker to usurp Skyvault and its control. Meanwhile, Max and Ace realize the attack they're managing was a distraction, and is proven right when Crystal contacts them about Doc Terra taking control of Skyvault. Doc Terra then uses his innovation to control all the animals on Earth. While Hacker takes Crystal to a prison cell, she backflips him and runs away to the auxiliary control room. The animals, especially the ones in the zoo, break out of their cages and are wreaking havoc. Meanwhile, even Shadow, Jake's loyal dog, starts attacking him. Jake is stunned, but still tries to fend him off gently when he realizes the dog has got extraordinary strength all of a sudden. He is nearly cornered and overwhelmed when the other two Centurions arrive. They try to reason with Shadow, and it works. Shadow remembers all the good memories he has had with Jake, and thus breaks Doc Terra's influence on him. Then, all of the three Centurions and Shadow use the old-fashioned way of reaching the Skyvault, space traveling. Meanwhile, Crystal successfully gets control of Skyvault through the auxiliary control system and contacts the Centurions who are facing attacks from Doc Terra as they're trying to enter Skyvault. The Centurions, with a little help from Crystal, successfully get into the Skyvault and try to catch Terra and Hacker, who promptly escape. Later, the innovation lands in their hands while the animals on Earth are freed from the influence of Terra's remote control.
Right back at you.
Episode 54, To Dare Dominion, Part 1. The Centurions and John Thunder are watching a video where John is fighting another man named Claw. They once were jujutsu partners, but now he has switched over to Terra's side. Terra, on the other hand, is up to something. He is tampering with space and time, which in turn could be harmful for reality as it stands. Honestly, the worst possible scenario. Crystal reiterates the fact to Centurions, who decide that they must find the Dominion. John Thunder, the infiltration specialist, decides the best way to find the Dominion is to rely on old methods of sneaking. Meanwhile, Doc Terra is anxious. He needs another generator for more power, but has no clue where to get one. Hacker had a lead, and Terra orders him to acquire it by hook and crook. As the Hacker is planning to steal the generator, the Centurions attack. However, their attack is just a cover for John Thunder to sneak into Terra's aircraft and be carried to Dominion. Once at Dominion, John disembarks from the aircraft and starts to look around. He is confronted by a cyborg, but uses his sonic knife to destroy it. Meanwhile, John's nemesis is also in Dominion and senses John's presence. He goes and informs that to Terra, who orders Claw to bring John back. Meanwhile, Hacker is attacking a facility again. The Centurions are there to help, and soon turn most of the cyborgs into scrap metal. Back at Dominion, John comes face to face with Claw and fights him. However, this time Claw wins and takes John to Terra, where John refuses to admit how he got to know Dominion's location. Terra vows to take care of him later and orders Claw to manage him for the time being. Once again, the two nemesis fight, and Claw blames John for driving him to Terra. Meanwhile, the situation with the concepts of reality starts melding. The Centurions decide it is up to them to find Dominion now. However, as it stands, even Terra has lost control of his new creation this time. Episode 55, To Dare Dominion, Part 2. The episode begins where it left off with reality being warped tremendously. As the Centurions are looking for the Dominion, their assault weapons start having a mind of their own, attacking its owner. However, just in time they eject themselves and ask for different weapon systems from Crystal. Later, Crystal simply beams them up on Skyvault before things can grow more problematic. Meanwhile, at Dominion, John Thunder has found the coordinates and sent them to Crystal, who finds it difficult to read them due to the warping reality. On the other hand, Terra and Hacker are having one hell of a time managing the anomaly they created. Back at the Skyvault, the Centurions take a chance and beam down to the skeptical coordinates. John Thunder, though, is again confronted by Claw, but before they can fight, he is a cyborg with tentacles that break them apart. They manage to escape, vowing to fight again. The Centurions, though, are finding it hard to manage all the cyborg creations that have come to life. However, Crystal manages to find the exact coordinates and transfers their assault systems to them. But like before, after some time their weapon system again attacks them. Just as they try to escape, their road seems to inevitably be blocked by the tentacle cyborg. Meanwhile, Doc Terra's anomaly heads for the power control room. Just as it seems the Centurions are cornered, John helps them and fends the cyborgs. The Centurions ask for other weapon systems and fend off the cyborgs while John is fighting his nemesis for the last time. Meanwhile, as the anomaly grows, the Centurions arrive and Rex fires at it with Gatling Guard, eradicating it.
I got to hand it to you, Hacker. That was pretty slick how you got in here.
You think so, huh?
Episode 56, Hole in the Ocean, Part 1. A public event is underfoot where delegatory officials from Earth and the underwater city of Atlantis are announcing their new cooperation scheme of exchanging technological benefits. Princess Diana is called on stage to formally announce the initiative. Rex is in Atlantis and is also part of the inauguration ceremony there. However, as the event is being broadcast, two people watch the news with much envy. The duo is Naro and the mad scientist Fisto. The scene shifts and the underwater shuttle train is all set for its first jaunt through the water. However, as the train starts its journey, the event is also watched by Doc Terra. He plans to hijack the underwater train and get inside the force field of Atlantis. He has sent Hacker to oversee the mission. He plans to turn them into cyborgs. Unbeknownst to the train driver, Hacker enters the train and once it is past the force field barrier, starts attacking Atlantis. Crystal and Rex panicked while Ace and Max, who were at the ceremony, watched the events unfold. They contact Crystal, but soon realize they can't beam themselves directly into the underwater city due to their force field. Meanwhile, Crystal's group hurries back to the capital of Atlantis so that they can disable the force field momentarily. However, in this chaos, the two prisoners make their escape and plot revenge on Princess Diana. Naro hopes to get back the rule of Atlantis, as he thinks it's his right to begin with. The scene shifts, and Crystal's little group arrives at the capital, but Hacker intercepts them. But with a little ingenuity, they escape and bring down the force field for a while. Crystal then tells Ace and Max that they can now get into the city, and they quickly call for their high-tech exoframes. Even Jake and John are called for a backup. Together, they fight off Doc Terra's cyborgs. After a swift fight, Hacker realizes the Centurions have overpowered them and makes his escape. However, he realizes that Terra won't be happy with him for his failure. Doc Terra is indeed disappointed in the mission's failure and vows to lead the next attack himself. Meanwhile, as Ace and Rex stay back to take care of the aftermath, another trouble is brewing. Princess Diana receives a report of the escaped prisoners. Naro and Fisto are scheming in earnest to take back Atlantis' throne. Fisto, a mad scientist, invents a new dangerous thing, a black hole that can consume the entirety of the city once it surpasses the gravitational pull. Meanwhile, Princess Diana is concerned about Naro's supporters, and Ace reassures her that he'll find Naro's whereabouts. However, as he traces Naro's location into a pub and starts inquiring, he is ambushed by a group of Naro's supporters and is locked away.
Be ruler of a backwater such as this. Out of my...
Episode 57, Hole in the Ocean, Part 2. As Ace gains consciousness, he realizes that he'd been ambushed by Naro's supporters. He tries to contact Crystal, but his wrist device has been confiscated by the perpetrators. However, he overhears that the perpetrators are planning to take him directly to Naro, so he decides to play along. Meanwhile, Doc Terror realizes that something is going on while organizing his attack, and understands that someone named Naro is behind it. He then contacts Naro, and as it happens, Doc Terror offers his help to him. Naro readily accepts the help of a second ally. Meanwhile, his scientist has fully developed the black hole. Naro then issues an ultimatum to Princess Diana to either surrender in 12 hours or face the consequences. He also hinted that they've captured Ace. Rex immediately contacts Crystal and informs her of Ace's capture. Meanwhile, Max intercoms and tells Crystal that he'd heard the news too, and he'd be heading down there to help them. Meanwhile, Naro is stunned that the scientist is wholly devoted to his brilliant invention rather than his long-term plan. Meanwhile, Ace is in Naro's hideout and mockingly greets Naro by saying that Naro's partner is not exactly aligned with his vision after all. Naro then tells Ace that he already has a new ally, Doc Terror, who'll back Naro up. Ace scoffs at the thought because Terror does nothing altruistically. Indeed, Doc Terror has more ulterior motives in allying with Naro. He sees Naro as a pawn, disregards his 12-hour window, and launches an attack on Atlantis. Rex and the other Centurions are rushed into stopping the attack. Doc Terror unleashes a cyborg shark on Max, but he easily defeats it. Meanwhile, Terror finally gets to Naro's hideout, bursting in without much politeness, and demands to take control of the black hole. However, Fisto shoves him off when Terror tries to touch Fisto's invention. This angers Terror, and he forcefully removes Fisto from his seat and tries to handle the control system himself. However, he cannot control it, and in annoyance leaves the black hole to consume Atlantis, while he flees to the safe zone with Hacker. Seeing Terror's betrayal, Naro realizes he has doomed Atlantis and decides to free Ace. Meanwhile, as Doc Terror was trying to escape, Max tried to stop them, but Terror ultimately ditched his larger escape vehicle for a smaller one and slipped out of Atlantis. However, the threat of the black hole was looming large and the citizens were being evacuated to safety, as Rex tried to take care of the black hole situation. With his wit, Rex was successful in mitigating the danger of the black hole and saving the underwater city from being annulled. Later on, as Princess Diana treats Ace's injuries, he tries to ask her out. However, she deftly declined his offer, claiming she has other things to take care of, namely her marriage. Episode 58, The Better Half, Part 1. The episode begins with another of Doc Terror's attacks. This time, Terror is attacking Ice Castle, a very important satellite station for Skyvault. He is using his arsenal of various cyborgs to attack. However, the Centurions arrive. One by one, Jake and Ace eliminate Terror's cyborgs. However, they are soon approaching their limit, but the cyborgs keep on coming. That is when Max also enters the fray, and even the scales. Seeing the interruption, Terror orders more troop cyborgs. However, due to some connection issue, Hacker and Terror can't send in more cyborgs and thus abandon the mission for a quick retreat into the Dominion. Jake, though, gives a chase, and in the process manages to cause harm to Terror's syntax unit. The duo escapes, and Terror ditches his syntax unit for a spare unit. He wants to resume the invasion and later repair the damaged syntax unit. Meanwhile, Jake is dismayed that he was so close to catching Terror. In the Dominion, Hacker also changes out of his Legion unit for a spare one. Once fitted with spare units, Doc Terror and Hacker head out to attack Ice Castle once more. However, the Centurions again botched the plan. Meanwhile, within Dominion, Terror's and Hacker's cyborg suits merge to form Uniborg. Maybe that is how you spell impending doom. When Terror and Hacker return to the Dominion, they're shocked to find the Uniborg, who banished the duo, and decisively took control of the Dominion. They were given 45 seconds to run away, and if they didn't, they'd be eliminated. So, Hacker and Terra run, but as soon as they step outside, the Centurions are waiting there to catch them. Thus, after years of wreaking absolute havoc, Terra and Hacker are captured. They were put on trial where they were found guilty and were sentenced to a rehabilitation center for an indefinite time. The Centurions are awarded with medals, and the news of their success over Terra is broadcasted everywhere. However, the news is also being watched by the Uniborg. This merged creation is the smarter and better half of Terra and Hacker, and as such, was successful in creating a new cyborg brain. The Uniborg fitted these brains into the combatant cyborgs, making them more deadly and experienced. The Uniborg sets its eyes on the sandcastle and sends this newly equipped combatant cyborg to handle the mission. Meanwhile, Crystal says it is nice to have the Centurions around for so long. However, it is at the same precise moment the Sky Vault receives alerts for some disturbance. The Centurions go to the coordinates and realize that they've to fight cyborgs again. As they each start to fire at the cyborgs, they realize these cyborgs are advanced. They try to fend them off as long as they can, but bit by bit, these new cyborgs are gaining an advantage over the Centurions. They have all the three cornered and beaten in no time. Episode 59, The Better Half, Part 2. To save the day, Crystal Kane dutifully beams the trio back to safety after their latest run over. As she rushes towards them, she finds Jake dazed over the fact that the Centurions were beaten while Max is dangerously injured. Meanwhile, news is broadcasted by the Uniborg, who appears on the screen as an old man. The Uniborg tells the world that the Centurions lost and that it succeeded in capturing Sandcastle, an important Caribbean oceanic research center whose purpose was to send important information about the Dominion to Skyvault. The Uniborg promises that no personnel of the Sandcastle would be harmed and the Dominion would now have control over it. Meanwhile, at Skyvault, Crystal tells them that the satellite research stations are important for overall access on Earth. If even one of the stations is hijacked, the Skyvault would be stranded blind. Thus, finding the location of Dominion would be not easy. The Centurions, Jake and Ace, only Max is convalescing, head over to one person who can tell them about the Dominion and this new Uniborg, Doc Terra. They head over to the rehabilitation center and find Hacker playing with a kitten as a part of their rehabilitation. They find Doc Terra even there, creating cyborgs out of rats. Ace demands to know the location of the Dominion. Terra refuses to betray the location of the Dominion, but reveals that the Uniborg used a hologram to dispel the message, and the thing is a true cyborg. Suddenly, the Centurions receive a signal from Crystal about Uniborg attacking again. They set off to fight it, however. Ace taunts Terra by saying that the Uniborg is counting on Terra's pride to not reveal the location of the Dominion. As the Centurions arrive, the advanced cyborgs again overwhelm Jake and Ace. In fact, Jake is terribly injured this time. Ace chooses to surrender to save his friend by taking it back to safety. Later, as Jake is being treated at a medical facility, he remarks, "Ace is the only Centurion left." The Uniborg later also broadcasted its achievements live on TV, which made Terra really mad. He demanded to see Ace right away. Ace, for his part, agreed to join forces with Doc Terra and Hacker for the moment. However, there were certain terms of his, like he was to be given full control of a lab, since if he was to break into Dominion, he needed weapons, and only Terra and Hacker would enter Dominion, not Ace, and he was to distract the cyborg combatants, while Terra and Hacker took care of the Uniborg. Reluctantly, Ace agreed. However, Crystal encouraged him to not go since there was a good possibility he'd not return. However, Ace told her that he'll return for a kiss from her. Crystal said that if he comes alive, then they'll see who kisses who. With that, she beamed Ace down. As Ace is distracting the cyborg troops, Terra and Hacker wait for the signal to sneak into the Dominion. As soon as they see the signal, they get into the Dominion and surprise the Uniborg. After a quick scuffle, Terra and Hacker overpower the Uniborg and regain their control over the Dominion. The episode ends with Ace stealing that kiss away from Crystal in front of a video call with Jake and Max. However, Lucy, our dearest gorilla, also wanted a kiss from the Casanova boy. Episode 60, Revenge. Hacker secretly keeping tabs on a girl named Marina Abbott. She is overseeing a cargo load, and Hacker asks if he should capture her, but Doc Terror denies and asks him to attack the cargo ship instead. Once the ship sails, Terror's cyborgs attack it. The ship sends a distress signal to Skyvault, and Crystal sends Ace and Max to handle the situation. Meanwhile, Marina, who was also on the ship, says she'll try to lure some of the attackers with her jumps into the water. As Ace and Max fend them off, Marina is caught by one of the subborgs. However, a giant lobster frees her, but unfortunately in the process, she drops her communication device. After the attack, when Max and Ace see Marina come up for air and quickly scold her for being in the water since she could get heart. Later, Marina tells them that she has taken over her father's research and she does not want them to protect her anymore. Max tries to get information on Marina and visits her research facility along with Ace, which is on an island. There, they come across a giant lobster and a giant turtle, but Marina doesn't seem afraid of them and says this was what her research was. The giant sea creatures can be controlled by her, and the council plans to use them. However, Marina has other plans in mind. Meanwhile, Doc Terror is searching for Marina after he finds her communication system on one of his cyborgs. Later, when Ace is surveying the island, he finds Marina going deeper into the woods. He follows her to a cave, only to be caught by her. She tells him she is planning to exact revenge on Terror for destroying his father's reputation. She opens up her island and hopes Terror will take the bait. However, before she can make sure Max is away, Terror comes and attacks them. The giant lobster and turtle are no match for Terror's cyborgs, and they end up being fodder for his cyborg making machine. Meanwhile, Crystal contacts Jake, worried about the other two Centurions. She sends Jake, who finds Ace and helps him out. Meanwhile, Marina has realized the fatality of her plan, of how fragile it actually is. Max and she escape and meet with the other Centurions. They suit up to take care to chase Terror out, who has just converted the giant lobster into a cyborg. They fight the cyborgs, however. The giant lobster takes Marina with her. Max dives in to save her with a little help from Ace. The episode ends with Marina apologizing to Max about her naivete and accepting that revenge might not be the best medicine always. Episode 61, Man or Machine Part 1. Doc Terror's henchman Hacker is stealing a computer disk from a facility. Not the most elaborate of heists, no. Anyhow, the Centurions arrive expecting a fight, but even Hacker has already left. He did leave a lot of chaos behind, but essentially left without a proper face-to-face fight. Meanwhile, the Centurions visit the C-Lab. There, the Centurions remark on how much the C-Lab has changed since their almost destruction last time. Melee then shows the Centurions their new suits. However, instead of 3, there are 5 exoframes. It is then they get to know that 2 more members are going to be onboarded on their team. Rex Charger, an energy specialist, and John Thunder, the infiltration specialist. Meanwhile, the disk that the hacker stole was not for nothing. Doc Terror is using it to find a single planet in the Milky Way galaxy, a place from where the meteorite containing a special virus came last time. The virus could control any computer. Terror wants to find the planet and get hold of that virus. However, what he found was even more interesting, a set of codes. He uses it to make a supercomputer. Nevertheless, he lacked the funds to make one, so as he sent the Centurions on a wild goose chase, Hacker gathered all the necessary equipment to make a supercomputer. As Ace and Rex deal with decoy cyborgs, John and Jake deal with the other half of the decoys. After finishing them off, they head to Centrum, where they're told that before becoming a permanent Centurion, Rex Charger and John Thunder need to attend the academy where Centurions are trained. On the Dominion though, Doc Terror has finished making the supercomputer. Once it comes to life, it introduces itself as GOG. He tells the story of how humans on its planet destroyed themselves and only several handful of computers survived. They became more powerful and superior after humans perished and rebuilt their world in their new vision. Here on Earth, GOG also plans to eradicate all humans and create a paradise of computers and machines. Doc Terror is genuinely pleased with this, as it aligns with his vision. Episode 62, Man or Machine, Part 2. The episode begins with the supercomputer establishing a veritable dominance. It says it controls most of Terra's machines, like Magog, which is practically a physical extension of the supercomputer. He picks up Hacker and shoves him off, showing its power. Meanwhile, the Centurions are initiating the new ones into their fold. On the other hand, Magog is showing its deftness to Terra. Later, the Hacker takes it to a warehouse which beams up to Sky Vault. There, he takes control of all the machines and hides themselves into crates that are beamed up. In this episode, though, we are given a glimpse of how Hacker and Terra began. Terra once found Hacker in a scuffle and saved him. Later, he offered Hacker a partnership with him, which Hacker accepted. Surprisingly, Terra was once part of the World Council of Scientists, but his invention was rejected. He merged Hacker into a cyborg, and he angrily vowed revenge on them. Back in the present, Hacker and Terra burst out from their hiding place into the Sky Vault and imprison Crystal. Meanwhile, the Centurions are training together. There is also a flashback here of when Max Ray became a Centurion and his first mission with Crystal Kane by his side. Meanwhile, in the present, Terra is using the computers of Sky Vault to directly spread the virus all over New York. Soon, all the computers and machines are under the influence of the virus. They start attacking people and wreaking havoc. The Centurions are called on priority alert and briefed on the situation. However, since even Sky Vault is infected, they can't have their assault systems. They sought help with C-Lab, but even there the situation was not ideal. However, only the Centurion Academy is safe because even Sky Vault doesn't know its location. But it won't be safe for long. They can shield their weapon systems, but other than that, they're stranded. Meanwhile, Crystal is trying to find a way out and shut the computers. Down back at the Academy, the Centurions conclude that they need to steal the memory disk from Centrum. Otherwise, even the Academy's location would be out. Ace and John Thunder agree to the mission. John managed to get the disk, but was cornered by the Cyborgs and Magog.
Shurian Air at your service. Okay, gang. Let's see if we can't.
Episode 63, Man or Machine, Part 3. As you can recall, John Thunder was at a loss of ideas to save himself from Magog in the last episode. This one picks up from there as John tries to figure out a way to make it out alive. Suddenly, that is when he is beamed up by Doc Terra onto Sky Vault. He is taken prisoner and strapped onto a medical bed. He'll be turned into a cyborg. Meanwhile, Crystal tries to think hard and fast about how to get out of her confinement and foil Terra's plans. She manages to escape with the help of Lucy, but has Hacker on her trail. On the other hand, the remaining Centurions go on the offensive, as they are tired of being sitting ducks. Doc Terra broadcasts a message about how he's about to turn the world of humans into a world of machines. Meanwhile, Rex is trying to draw enough power to create a magnetic field around NYC, so that Terra can't control all the machines. On the other hand, the OG Centurions are trying their best to fend off the machines and prevent them from causing more chaos. However, Crystal on the Sky Vault comes up with a plan to trick Hacker into thinking that the Centurions are coming for them and saves John Thunder from becoming a cyborg. When Hacker goes to Doc Terra, he immediately says there are no Centurions and orders Hacker to go and look for their captives. The supercomputer informs that their hive is ready for the production of full-scale machines for war. Meanwhile, John tells Crystal that the disk he has also acts as an emergency power control. They can switch off the computer and stop the virus from spreading. As Terra goes to the hive, he orders Hacker to dispose of Crystal and John. However, the pair was successful in shutting the computers of Sky Vault and breaking the influence of the virus. However, if they turn it on again, the virus will start spreading once more. Crystal thus contacts the Centurions and tells them of the situation. Max says that they've got the antiviralizer to reverse the virus. While the Centurions figure out a way to reach the Sky Vault, Terra uses this to send strappers to hit the Sky Vault. The situation grows denser by the second. Episode 64, Man or Machine, Part 4. There is much anticipation and tension in the air as Crystal and John are still hurtling towards Earth without their power, but if they switch it on, the virus will take over again. However, a group of strappers are on their way to destroy it. A tough call, if there was any, but Crystal decided to switch on the computer and let it take care of the strappers. However, the downside is, the infected computer again holds dominance here. Meanwhile, on Earth, the Centurions are trying to find a way way to send the anti-viralizer to cure Skyvault. They realize that if the force field is off, they can get in, and Ace is the man to do the job. However, it's not easy with the infected computer being in charge, but somehow Crystal and John switch it off for long enough for Ace to come and use the anti-viralizer. With the Skyvault under their control again, they turn their attention to C-Lab. Max and John Thunder jump in on the task and successfully gain control of it. Doc Terror is furious with the turn of events, but he is confident that the Hive and its hundreds of cyborgs would be enough to conquer the Earth. He has even held the World Council captive in the Hive, but it seems GOG has its plans. He has taken control of the Dominion's weapon systems. When Hacker tells Doc Terror, he demands the supercomputer to relinquish the hold, but the supercomputer turns on them. They hide, and Hacker brings down the force field long enough for the Centurions to come and attack the Hive. They fight off most of the cyborgs. However, they see a horde of missiles heading for outer space. At first, they assume it is for Skyvault, but then they realize GOG is targeting an asteroid. The supercomputer is really vengeful. If the asteroid particles hit Earth, then major cities will be blown off the map. Ace goes on to save the day, but miscalculations happen when people least expect it, and Ace is caught up in the backfire. Episode 65, Man or Machine, Part 5. We're down to the final showdown, it seems. The episode begins with Crystal trying to beam back Ace with no luck. The instability is too high for the computer to pick up Ace. Meanwhile, John frees the members of the World Council from the Hive. Suddenly, Hacker appears and gives them the coordinates of where the asteroid particles will hit. The Centurions gather around and discuss how to stop it, since if they fail, the world will collapse into an ice age once more. The Centurions came up with a plan. It was decided that Ace would be their first line of defense. Meanwhile, Jake would take the ones that'll hit Northern California. John would take the Russian steppes, while Rex with his Gatling guard would tackle the largest, which is headed for Tokyo. Finally, that leaves Hawaii to Max. Meanwhile, Hacker is being chased by the cyborgs under GOG's control. However, Doc Terror saves him and escapes from the Hive. The Centurions do well on it, and soon enough they have destroyed the particles before they could cause any damage. Once they've cleared the path and GOG has seen its defeat, Doc Terror pulls the last trigger and blows up the Hive. However, GOG is one annoying supercomputer and plays its last trump card. But the Centurions are naught for nothing, and they manage to save humanity from GOG's final assault. The season finale ends with Centurions being awarded for their bravery to save Earth in its darkest hour, while also surprisingly inviting Doc Terror back to the World Council of Scientists. An end of an era, finally. As we come to a close of this sci-fi series, one thing becomes glaringly clear. It was well received, particularly by the fans. It is often remembered as a nostalgic and action-packed show with a unique premise. It was particularly notable for its innovative concept, where the heroes, Max Ray, Ace McCloud, and Jake Rockwell, wore exoskeleton suits that allowed them to combine with advanced weapon systems, fighting their nemesis, the cyborg Doc Terror, to save Earth. The show was a classic example of 1980s action cartoons and had a visual pedigree that many cartoons of the time lacked. However, the show received mixed to positive reviews over the years. The newer generation often remarked on the discrepancies and inconsistent storylines that the show is rigged with. In contrast to other sophisticated TV shows of the era, such as Transformers or G.I. Joe, it has been criticised for lacking subtle character development and intricate narrative. Because the fights and technology were prioritised over relationships and personal growth, the heroes felt a little flat. Additionally, Doc Terror was a really simple antagonist with little depth, which would not appeal to audiences used to characters with greater depth nowadays. However, despite its critics, the show stands as a cult classic even today, with its distinctive mix of futuristic technology and superheroes.